Namaste, everyone. How is everyone today? Welcome to the live stream. We've got 22 already in the room. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Who have we got? 6574. Welcome, my friend. Thank you. Judy, good to see you. Sonia, yes, it's happening. It's happening. Everyone, let me know where you're coming from. Don't be shy. There's 22 already in the room, 12 gone now. So let me know if you're there, if I'm coming in loud and clear. I hope you're all well. Len, good to see you, Len. Thank you for always staying awake, Len. I appreciate it. 1 a.m. Mate, I'm going to have to start this live stream a bit earlier, I think, for you, I think. Maybe a few hours earlier. Miss Zen in the house. Thank you, Miss Zen. Montreal. Sonia, good to see you in here. Arizona must be beautiful today. Judy, Michigan, thank you. Sweden. Greetings from Texas. Aaron, love Texas. Zane, I'll get to your question in a minute, Zane. Sadhu, Sadhu. Oh, lots of love from Malaysia. Thank you. Love Malaysia. 6574, 1 a.m. Are you in UK? 65? Let me know. Lane, Alabama, love it. Tobin, Cameron, welcome. Amagaman Todochi, sorry if I mispronounced your name, your handle. Hello from Lisbon. Love it. Sue Mosley, welcome. Karen, Washington State. Travis, Mississippi in the house. Luther. Yes, good to see you. Hope Ohio is good, Luther. Chris, Melbourne. Hope you're doing well down there, Chris. Christina, Maine. I have some friends in Maine, Christina. John C. Welcome. Good to see you. Raul, Argentina in the house. Anusrut, New York. Zane, you've already asked 2 questions, Zane, so I'll get to there. We got 28. We'll get 28 in the room. Remember, let me know where you're coming from. Rebecca, Nevada, love it. Sadhu, Sadhu. Hey, that's cool, Jason. Buzz me when you are coming to Kuala Lumpur. I will be. Oh, my friend, I would love to come to Kuala Lumpur right now. Love to go to Penang. To be honest, I'd just love to get out of Australia. Let's put it that way. And get back to Asia. I am just waiting to go back to Asia. Doyle, Arkansas. Zane, Germany. Love it. Poboshen, Vietnam. Lyle, back in the house. Catty in Texas. I have a lot of people from actually Texas, Lyle, and a few friends from Texas. It's good to see. Southeast Asia is awesome. Poboshen, one of my favorite places in the world. Actually, my 2 favorite places in the world is South Asia and Southeast Asia. For obvious reasons, yeah. I teach Eastern philosophy, so that's where majority of it is found. You are from Penang. Wow. So good. I've actually never been to Penang, funnily enough. Gayang has been to Penang. She said I would really love it. She told me of the Little India area or something of that nature that she really enjoyed. Shraddha, Haribol, I love it. Lake Placid, New York, beautiful. Art in the house. Welcome, my friend. Yes, I do love Vietnam, Poboshen. Been there many times. Yes, I've never been to Penang. I definitely need to go. It's the Pearl of the Orient. Yes, I've heard many good things. Gayang's tried to get me to go there a lot, and but it's just been a situation that we haven't been able to get. Well, when I was living over there, we just couldn't get there. Okay. Judy, I'm reading about Indonesia. What are you reading about, Judy? To live there or something like this? A lot of people are actually relocating to Indonesia, and something that Guyang and I are thinking about. But we'll probably, in all likelihood, probably go back to either India, Nepal, or Thailand, maybe. Laos, possibly. Vietnam, possibly. Sri Lanka, maybe. So let's have a look. Zane says, what country would you recommend living post-pandemic? I don't know. Wherever you feel comfortable, Zane. For me personally, I'll be getting back to Asia, so I'll be getting back to one of those countries I just mentioned, and yeah, just getting back to how I usually live. Actually, the way I live here in Australia is not much changes in my life personally, but I don't know. I just haven't lived a lot in the West in my adult life, so I don't really vibe with it anymore. I'm more focused on what I'm doing and visiting the great places. And as you guys saw the thumbnail of this live stream, under the Bodhi tree live stream, I just make up any sort of thumbnail these days for the live streams. But I mean, there's a lot to that, because I'll explain to you guys later what it's actually like under the Bodhi tree and the people you meet and just the experiences you have. It's an amazing place. And Bodh Gaya itself, I mean, if you really want to be focused on sincere spiritual work, then Bodh Gaya is definitely the place one of the places to go. I'd highly recommend. It strips everything back. You're actually butt naked when you go to Bodh Gaya. There's no room for the ego to survive, you could say. So what else do we have here? Zane, opinion on weed. I don't have any problem with weed. I personally don't smoke weed, but each to their own. I don't think there's that would be like having we all know the alcohol causes more problems than marijuana in the world, right? So I don't really have a opinion on that. Just that if that's good for you, then it's good for you. I'm not in the business of telling people what to do. So I think it can be problematic, if you smoke way too much. I've seen that in the past with certain people, but at the same time, it might not be for some, so. But for myself personally, I steer clear of it, because I don't personally get anything out of marijuana. So. Aaron, having trouble forming good habits like daily meditation. Any advice? Aaron, if you don't mind me asking, how busy is your life in general? Do you have a lot of commitments? Do you work in a job that's very demanding? There's a lot of questions that need to be unpacked. If you could give some sort of context there, maybe. Grant, actually, Asia is west from Australia. Okay. Pobashan, so close to Oz. Yes. Heather in the house. Hi, Jason. I can only pop in for a moment. Hope you and Guyang are well. Much love, friends. Much love to you, Heather. Heather's a Patreon, everyone. And if you want to watch the replays of these live streams, then please consider becoming a member, because they will be only exclusive after the fact on Patreon. And there's a lot of content that we have on Patreon. So that's something for everyone to think about. So let's have a look here. Who have we got here? Remember, everyone, keep the questions coming. Keep the questions coming. Let me know where you come from. We got 34 in the house, 32 likes. Make sure you give a like. give a thumbs up. And yes. All right. So let's have a look here. Luther, what can you say about the solar plexus chakra, the Manipura chakra? I think you're talking about Luther here. So for those who have not watched the podcast on the chakras with Guyang and I highly recommend going and watching that. We have a real detailed analysis of each chakra. But again, the Manipura chakra, again, being like the belly, right, is associated with governance, personal power, some in some sense can be related to greed and so forth and so on. So you have that sort of element of the chakra. But, it can also be related to, in some sense, also personal freedom and choice and so forth and so on. The only thing is the Manipura, like they dissect a lot of the chakras between the bottom three and the top three. So, and the top three beginning with the Anahata at the heart. So, which is kind of a transition out of those lower chakras, the Manipura especially, which is obviously dominated with governance and the urge for power. So that's one of the problems with the Manipura chakra, is that there can be an urge for power, control of others. And as we see in the world today, where everyone is in this habit, so strange habit really, of telling everyone how to live and how to be. So, and that's again a result of not living in the Anahata chakra, which is which is kind of the energy center that most of us should reside in, but a lot of us reside in the belly, and so we live in a world of excess, right? We live in a world of excess. So when you're living from the Manipura, you live in that world of excess and you operate from an excessive mind. So, like I said, with Bodh Gaya and the Mahabodhi temple and the Bodhi tree, when you're in a location like that, you cannot live in that sort of the lower chakras. You naturally progress into the upper chakras and into the heart chakra, and then ascend the levels from there, so to speak. So. First name, last name. Jason, I got out of a 5-year relationship. I'm not too beat up over it, but having someone who's been in your life for so long suddenly be gone is hard to deal with. Any advice? Yes. Relationships, first name. It's one of the interesting things. It can feel like real, in some sense, physical pain when a relationship has severed. In Taoism, they call it like a cut, right? It's like a cut. It's a severing of something that was there and then something that's gone. It's almost as if it's like a death, even though it's not a death. But the pain can be somewhat the same if it's been a long-term relationship like yours, which is 5 years. I would say that's a long-term relationship. Some people may disagree. But when you're with someone for 5 years, you've definitely, kind of commingled your energy with their energy, and in some sense you've become one unit. And so when that unit kind of is separated, then it can be a lot of pain. Now obviously, it's a cliche, all time heals wounds. In saying that, you have to address the attachment that you have to that specific individual. You have to kind of go through some sort of inner inquiry and analyze what are the elements that are keeping you attached to that individual, so to speak. So I know it's easier said than done. Obviously, more meditation, more dispassion also will allow you to deal with this. Now, when I say dispassion, I mean vairagya. So you're developing a distance with the relationship as well. Because one thing is for sure, the more you hold on to it, the more you dwell on it, the more the energy of that will take over. Now, it doesn't mean you should avoid it or not deal with it. I'm not saying that, but you have to have a fine balance between dispassion and also inquiry into the nature of that relationship. So. I mean, we could go on and on and on about that, right? So, Karen, is there reincarnation or predestination? Well, it's pretty much a mixture of both, Karen. If we look at it from the Eastern philosophical schools, yeah, it's a mixture of both. So you have, in most schools, you have the idea of predestined karma, and you have the idea of also reincarnation. So your reincarnation is predestined too. It all falls under that sort of umbrella. But again, a predeterminate reality is not as solid as probably what you think in Eastern philosophy. You know, for example, enlightenment itself is to transcend all karma, is to transcend all, let's say, fate that you are supposed to live out, or destiny you are supposed to live out. You actually transcend that, because the reincarnation and the parabdha karma, the predestined personal karma, only relates to the jiva, only relates to the ego. The self, the atman, the ultimate reality that we truly are, is not touched by any of those. It's the only reason the jiva can exist. I don't know if any of you watched our most recent podcast about the atman, but I highly recommend going and watching it. But the only reason that the jiva can exist is because of the atman. The only reason we all exist is because of the atman, that undifferentiated consciousness that animates all of us. So the only element, so to speak, of us that reincarnates is the jiva. The jiva is the one that is caught in the wheel of samsara. And so, and the one who is in the web of predestined personal karma is also the jiva. So what's the spiritual goal, in air quotes, for all of us is to, in some sense, move through that jiva and transcend that, to realize that we are the atman, and to abide as that atman as well. It doesn't mean you won't go about doing your daily things and you know, playing your role. Of course you will, but that you won't have a belief in that identity, and you also won't have a strong, you know, pull towards that identity. So when things happen to you, in air quotes, your jiva, then you won't be put off balance, because your grounding will be in the atman, and you know that this jiva is very temporary. So, Aaron, I work 40 hours a week and am married, not that busy, I think. Okay, that's good. Yeah, 40 hours, that's a pretty standard week, isn't it, Aaron? Forming good habits like daily meditation. Any advice? Aaron, if your life is clogged up with unnecessary distractions, that's going to impede your ability to have good habits like daily meditation, or, you know, reading the great scriptures, or something that is positive for your life. So what I mean by that is, like, you know, if you have a lot of television around, if you have you know, a smartphone that's always on 24/7 with all the apps and so forth and so on. If you have a lot of people in your life too, you know, now we love people, right? But we have to say that if we have too many people in our life, it can be a distraction somewhat. But you have a family and this and that, so that's all good. But I'm saying outside of that, right? Outside of that, where we can be too connected and overly connected, which is not natural. And so when we understand that it is not natural, then we can then begin to, you know, you don't want to just say you want to end relationships and this and that, but you want to focus on your practice itself. So to cultivate like a daily meditation practice, try to reduce a lot of digital input at nighttime and so forth and so on. And I don't know what time you usually work, but trying to wake up a little bit earlier to implement a meditation practice before your job, so to speak. And maybe having a meditation practice at night, you know, when you're devoid of all of this digital input and, you know, noise that the world is. And definitely don't watch the news. The greatest act of vairagya itself is not watching the news. And the news is really pointless, right? Like because news networks these days are all about the click rate and who was watching and this and that. So that they can make up anything, and if people watch and believe it, then they've done their job. So the more outrageous they are, the more people they get watching and this and that. You want to not play that game at all. Divorce from watching the news and any sort of noise that you have in your life, and try not to overstimulate your mind a lot. Once you don't overstimulate your mind, then you begin to gravitate more naturally towards meditation, and you'll begin to form a meditation practice daily that'll help you. So it really depends. Like if you want to put meditation on the top of the pedestal, then that's what actually needs to be done. Like, so that's your focus for the day. Sure, you have your job, your day job, but your focus is on developing the mind and on freeing yourself from suffering, which is the whole, so air quotes again, goal for most people on the spiritual path is to have that meditation practice on the pedestal. We got some great questions here, everyone. Excellent. Keep them coming. Awesome. Sonia, how to be spiritual in America? It is my big question right now. I am surrounded by this capitalistic energy and by people perverting everything that is spiritual, like yoga and ancient philosophies. Well, Sonia, it's not like it's a new thing, right? Like the perversion of spirituality in America has been prevalent actually since the counterculture movement. It's just more so these days because spirituality, unfortunately, and also in some sense it can be a good thing, has become commercialized and has become a commodity in places like America, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, so forth and so on. This is why I highly recommend, and some people don't understand this on the channel, but I recommend, especially Westerners, to go to the East, obviously when we have a chance, for longer periods of time, because then you get into the actual psychology of where spirituality came from. And the Eastern and the Western mind aren't the same. I know the West have this ridiculous idea that everyone thinks like the West. It doesn't. There is no one sort of universal way of thinking. Sure, we have same feelings and so forth and so on. The evolution of our cultures and the evolution due to the environments we were brought up in were different. And so our version of spirituality and ancient philosophies are a lot different. So it's good to get out of the West. This is why I mainly live in Asia. For that reason, it's good for my practice, and I resonate with those places. Sometimes you have to make a decision, Sonia. Sometimes you have to make a decision to go somewhere that matches your psychology. I had an old Taoist teacher tell me that once. The old Taoist teacher told me that you don't need to suck it up and try to get brownie points and a Mickey Mouse badge for sucking it up from the environment you are from. If your psychology doesn't match the environment, then maybe it's time to move on and say adios and move on to the next chapter in your life. Because there's an aspect of us where we are the environment, right? The jiva picks up certain aspects of the environment that are hard to avoid, even though your orientation is towards something else, in this sense, spirituality for you. So for yourself, Sonia, what I know of you from the channel is that you do have some distance from American culture in general, because you live in Arizona, and I might be wrong here, but I think you live somewhat in the countryside. So I think in some sense that if you're blessed enough to live in nature and live away from societies, then the only way that culture can come in is if you're allowing it to come in through the digital stream. Yeah. And so a lot of people I know people that live up on the mountains in Australia, right, that have contacted me and have asked the same sort of about the same sort of problem. And I'm like, where do you live? Like, you live on the mountain? Like, just turn the phone off. Don't watch the news. All there is the birds and the bees and the sun and the trees and the fresh air. Breathe it in, So if you're in that situation, I think that that's very easy. If you're in nature, Sonia. But if you're not, if you're in the city, then it becomes more problematic, with other people. And then I would have to say, then you have to consecrate your home. Now, one of the important things, and I talk about this also in my book, Emotional Intuition for Peak Performance, is the consecration of your home. Your home shouldn't just be a place where you come and you sleep and you mooch on food and you watch Netflix all day. It should be a temple. And I learned this actually from the Hindu tradition, from living in India, because everyone's home is, well, in more ancient times, probably not so much these days, everyone's home was treated as a temple. So you had a place of puja, you had a meditation space. Sure, you still had your kitchen and that to cook food and everything like that. But you have to consecrate your home, which then gives you a reprieve from the culture and society or place that you are living. So that's another important point to try and keep your spirituality intact, is to have that place and to have your home as a temple. And then, when you're out in society and that, you got to focus on your own meditative walking, maybe a mantra, and not allowing the noise to come into your eyes and ears, because that's how we mainly consume psychological energy. It's through our eyes and ears. So once we begin to, like my book, Fasting the Mind, when we begin to do this, then we begin to, in some sense, dissociate from our surroundings and the culture and that we are in. Yeah. So if you want to get annoyed and you want to get dragged into it, then turn on Twitter and jump in the news feed and then off down the rabbit hole you go. But that's only going to produce anxiety and stress, and that's going to exist whether you pay attention to it or not. So as long as it's not sort of incurring harm on your immediate life, then I would say you need to develop a practice of vairagya, of dispassion of worldliness, and sort of non-reactiveness too. So anyway, there's something we can talk more and more about that. Taishi Chi 5. Nice to meet you. How does one reconcile the Taoist concepts of accepting the world as it is and not forcing things, but also valuing Taoist humility and simplicity? What is the proper way to promote Taoist values? Well, they go hand in hand, my friend. So accepting the world and not forcing things, that's the path of humility and simplicity. Because you have to be humble to accept the world and to not force things. This is what humility is. This is what I speak about in my book, The Science and Practice of Humility. That's what the science of humility is, that the ancient masters, not just in the Taoist tradition, but that's what they embody, is allowing the world to be as it is and grow naturally and organically without any sort of interference. We've got to remember, Wu Wei is the path of non-interference. It's non-deliberate action, right? So, and it's difficult to say Taoist values too, right? Because then we're making Taoism, in some sense, similar then to Confucianism. Now, I know what you mean, but the proper way to promote Taoist values, so to speak, in air quotes, is to follow that path of non-interference and the path of least resistance. So the whole idea of Taoism, the crux of the Taoist technology, is about having a healthy and sane world, which happens through healthy and sane individuals. So that means that the more we interfere, so to speak, the more we contribute to chaos, the more we contribute to madness in the world, and also to our own madness, because then we have a personal agenda that we still haven't overcome. So this is not just a Taoist point too. This is an Eastern philosophical point in general, is that humility arises when you understand that when you are forcing your personal agenda on others, then that's only going to contribute to more chaos, more madness, and your own madness. So You can either live in the world of madness or you can live in the world of simplicity. It's easy. And so the path of Wu Wei is about not interfering, is about embracing the uselessness, so to speak. So, and becoming like the useless tree, like in the Zhuangzi text, right? The useless tree, everyone thinks that it has no use, so to speak, but everyone gets shade under the useless tree. The horses come to get shade, the people come to get shade, and it brings shelter to everyone. And that's actually that's what our simplicity and humility actually does, is it brings shelter and spiritual oxygen to those who are caught in the madness. You might not think that, but if you do follow that path, you will notice that people will begin to listen to you, maybe gravitate towards you. Maybe they will vent on you, which, can be problematic. But that's the bonus of following that kind of Taoist path of least resistance and non-interference. So again, humility, you're not interfering with anyone. You're not forcing things on anyone. You're living a simple life. You're living your life and not telling others what to do and how to be. And the point of that is that if we all did that, then there would be no problems. Now, obviously, we're not all doing that, but for that to begin, we have to start somewhere, and that's why we are all here today. So, okay, Mike in the house, the King of North Carolina. Good job, Mike. My MBA project teams are still working on my other laptop. I'll be in and out, but I'm delighted to be here. Mike, thank you, my friend. Thank you. All right. Some can't. It doesn't matter where you are or what time you live in. You can be spiritual, of course. Well, it doesn't matter if you don't want to be spiritual. You already are spiritual because your nature is Atman. So we can put on this show and think that we're not, but we are. It's like I told that story. I've told this story many times. When Alan Watts went to India and he was sitting with a guru in South India, and then a guy came by doing like, this guy was all crazy, And then the guru said to Alan, Shiva's coming on funny today, isn't he? And that's the point, see? But again, the guru can see the Atman and all. So, it's just Shiva's coming on funny. That's all it is. It's nothing to think about. So, yeah, there's no way we can't be spiritual. We can only delude ourselves into thinking that. Miss Zen, do you believe that it is true that our life is made to make us realize our true nature, that our trials are there to allow us this journey? Yes, I believe that in part, Miss Zen, I believe that in part, but I think that other people have different paths. So like I mentioned earlier with Karen's question, if we look at reincarnation, maybe not in some people's present life, that is the goal, even though that is the eventual goal, but it just takes maybe lifetimes after lifetimes, right? So yes, as I was taught a long time ago by gurus, the purpose of our existence here is to realize that. It's like realizing the formless, is why we're here. It's what we're doing here. And everything else is kind of is a postponement to that place. So when I first came into spirituality when I was younger, and I was reading the Avadhuta Gita, so I went backwards, right? I was reading the books, the Nidhyasana texts that you're supposed to read sort of beyond enlightenment. But that kind of flipped the script for me, and then everything in my life then has been one directional, so to speak. It's been this, and so some people it's not, right. I know that from the channel. I know that I get a lot of insincere people on the channel. Not saying anyone here, but I get a lot of insincere people on the channel who will, they obviously through their comments, you can tell that they're not on the spiritual path. But yes, I would say, Miss N, yes, I would say that is it. Let's have a look. Rebecca Sage. Mindfulness is easier than self-compassion. Any thoughts? Rebecca, I don't know in what context you're kind of saying that. I get it. I don't know where you've heard that or who told you that. I think that if I understand your question correctly, then the practice of mindfulness itself may be easier than self-compassion, because the ability to love oneself and to forgive oneself can be very difficult, as opposed to just mindfulness, right? Mindfulness, you're just practicing anapanasati, awareness of breath, awareness of things around you. That can only be difficult if you're training in satipatthana, so mindfulness. If you're training in mindfulness, it has not developed. So where your wandering mind kind of takes over. Where self-compassion, on the other hand, can be very difficult, right? Like to forgive oneself, to love oneself. Most of the time why we can't forgive others and have compassion for others is because we can't do that for ourselves. So I don't know. Like, I think it's horses for courses, and it's different. It depends on an aptitude too, Rebecca. Some people don't have a high aptitude at the beginning for spirituality. It may take them a lot longer to practice self-compassion, self-love, so to speak. Sonia, yes, I know place and time do not matter in theory, but in practice it is hard and a struggle, and I would love to have Jason's view on it. Yeah, it's true, Sonia, it's true. Guys, you don't want to make, and also don't shame other people's questions in the comments, yeah? Don't play this game of spiritual one-upsmanship. That's the height of spiritual immaturity. So don't do that in the comments, yeah? This is a mature forum here, so Sonia asked a genuine question, and I gave a genuine answer, and that's the end of the day. So, but Sonia has a point. We've all struggled on our journey with particular locations we're in, and this and that. We don't want to just come by and just wax lyrical and say that, wow, it doesn't matter where you are, you do this and that. That can be for some people, but some people are in different life situations. So let's be mindful of each and every person's personal life situation, yeah? Because everyone's on a different stage in development, and sometimes even someone at a higher stage of development, like I said with the old Taoist master that I know, when he said sometimes the psychological environment is very important, and he's saying this after 70 odd years of practice. And you know why he said that? Because he's okay to be honest about it, and to also be humble enough to accept that, look, sometimes you need to live in a place that suits your psychology. Most of us in general, right, would choose to live in nature or closer to nature. We don't make a big thing of that, right? We don't start defending then the city. Or maybe some people do defend the city, but I mean, the internet is a strange place. But you know what I mean? So we don't really make a song and dance about that, right? So let's not make a thing of that, and accept that other people are in different levels, and not try to play spiritual one-upsmanship. One of the big problems when Eastern spirituality went to the West is this idea of spiritual one-upsmanship. What is spiritual one-upsmanship? It's competition. It can be frustrating for myself, because I've been schooled in the East from Asian people, and so their psychology is not in those groups are not competitive. Everyone is kind of like supportive and listen very carefully. The art of listening is very important within Hinduism, Buddhism. Taoism, Jainism, and Sankhya yoga, all of these traditions, right? So the art of listening is very important. And so that's how we can practice also compassion to others as well, is listening and not saying, oh, you don't need to worry about it. There's a lot of satsang teachers now, right? Like someone will have a psychological problem. They go to the teacher and then all they will say is, who is the one that says this, right? So from a certain level, you can say that, but if someone is really struggling psychologically, then it's probably pretty much insensitive. So AJS, hello. Hello, my friend. Excellent. Excellent. Let's keep the questions coming. Remember, let me know where you're coming from, where you're located. We got 69 in the room now, only 51 thumbs up. Make sure everyone gives a thumbs up, yeah? If you would like to give a thumbs up, that's highly appreciated. I really enjoy these live streams. I enjoy talking to everyone. So I just want to let you know you're appreciated. I love and appreciate all of you. So even those trolls out there, yeah? So let's have a look. Rebecca, I'm fine. This is Tucson. I am also finding it harder to find spiritual community support. This will be a problem, Rebecca, probably ongoing for most people for their entire life, so to speak. Personally, I don't have. I live a very solitary life, to be honest with you. If it wasn't for Guy Young, I wouldn't speak. Or if I didn't do YouTube, I probably wouldn't speak all day. So, but I'm completely comfortable with being on my own without the need of support. But that comes through a lot of practice, right? Like Guy Young and I are actually going to do a podcast on loneliness in a couple of weeks, maybe this week. I don't know. We'll see how it all pans out. But it's interesting that the more you develop in your spiritual practice, the less you actually need people, so to speak. It doesn't mean you don't like people. It just means that you don't really feel the need to have people in your life, so to speak, right? So, and that's just a flowering of your own spiritual practice that will happen in time. So sometimes spiritual communities or spirituals, those sorts of spiritual communities don't also work too, Rebecca. There's a lot of spiritual communities I've known since I've been doing this that have fell apart because in some sense they weren't working on the actual process of spirituality. They were more focused on the community, the values of the community, and they were essentially just building a new society. And so that becomes problematic because then Jiva is versus Jiva, right? It's not Jiva is there for Shiva. Everyone is fighting amongst what's best for the community. And then I don't agree with her or him, and then the same problems happen that have always happened in society, where you have a lot of people barking at each other and trying to wield their opinion on other people. But in some sense, the Eastern spiritual path is about you gain the strength from dissolving the sense of identity to not actually need, others in your life, so to speak. But it's good that you do have others in your life. But if I was to drop you into the Himalayas, you'd be perfectly fine meditating in a cave. This is what you can learn from a lot of masters as well, because a lot of them do spend a lot of time on their own. Aaron, thank you. Thank you, Aaron. I hope it was helpful, my friend. Tobin, I'm certainly enjoying not watching the news lately, especially politics. You nailed that one. Cameron, beautiful. Yeah, don't just everyone, just if you want to practice vairagya or if you want to take your spiritual practice deeper, do not watch the news. Don't watch the news cycle. The news cycle is there for your attention, and a lot of it is garbage. Yeah, they don't even tell the truth half of the time these days. So it's good not to watch that, and also not to be focused on politics. Politics, in a sense, is, and I've said this before, is anti-spiritual because it's still based on the idea of agendas and sides. Now, if you're in the business of sides and agendas, or this team or that team, then the spiritual path's going to be a really tough path for you, because the dissolution of separation is what the spiritual path is about, because separation itself is an illusion, and we are all fundamentally one. It's just we identify with this localization of consciousness, which is the jiva in this part of the mind, which dissects the world up into this and that. We have to work on down regulating this. This is where meditation comes in and scriptures come in, down regulating this to see the world as it truly is. And that's all of our role, or our job on the spiritual path. Everyone, there's 79 in the room, only 61 thumbs up. Make sure you give a thumbs up. Yeah, 81 in the room. Pop a thumbs up there. Excellent. Sonia, I lived in Asia and Africa. That is why I'm struggling so much in America. Sonia, I hear you. I hear you, my friend. Definitely. I have a lot of people I know, a lot of friends here in Australia that struggle living in Australia for the same reasons. So I would say when you have an opportunity, do what's best for you, and not what's best for the society or the culture that you are from. Yeah. Because sometimes we are born in cultures that, in some sense, psychosomatically, our temperament does not match them. Even though you were born in that particular location, you just don't match. Most people do. The majority do, yeah. But you're obviously one of those oddballs, like me and probably like everyone else in here, who have an attraction to deeper knowledge, a more shanti life, and what could be more important? Lyle, welcome, Christina Powell. Okay. So let's have a look. See, this is the thing. See, there's some cunt individual. It's interesting because I mentioned spiritual one-upsmanship. They must have got upset. And what did he say? I like Jason, but I get nothing useful from him. I hope he does eventually progress. Bye all. So that's again a result of spiritual one-upsmanship. Yeah. So that means that individual has not progressed at all and are very judgmental. So anyway, that's just an example for everyone not to be like. Yeah. Some cunt is someone that you ought not to be like. I don't know who they are, but it's okay. I don't need to be liked, but to judge someone and to, one of the worst things that's developed in the West is when people, they have a buttering up mentality. Like, I like this guy, and that's developed especially since the internet. It's not a natural evolution of conversation. So I would avoid buttering up anyone. If you don't like the person, just say you don't like it and you don't find them useful. So that's definitely the attitude not to have. So remember, don't get in games of spiritual one-upsmanship. We're all on the path together, and listen to each other. Rebecca, I agree. I was completely changed by going to India and China for 3 months when I was 16. Well, Rebecca, there you go. How long ago was that, Rebecca? Was that a while ago? How many years are we talking there? I always find it interesting, those sorts of places when you go back in history, yeah? Because I've seen a lot of videos of China and India, like back in the 60s and the 50s, and people going on crazy quests, Oh, we've got a few super chats in the house. Art, thank you. Thank you for the super chat, Art. Thank you. Jay Lewis, thank you, my friend. You and your wife's videos and podcasts have been extremely beneficial for me. Thank you. Thank you, Jay. I appreciate you, my friend. Guys, if you have a super chat question, then they usually get answered first, but I will attempt to answer most of them. If you are rude like some can't, then I'll just avoid some of those. Luther, I struggled without self-esteem and confidence for a long time. Does solar plexus help one to have positive identity, feel worthy, and value themselves? I think this may be the next chakra I need to heal. Luther, look, self-confidence and self-esteem can be related to the Manipura. The only problem with that is, as I mentioned earlier, there's a fine line between dwelling in the Manipura chakra and it becoming a tendency for the urge for power. So when you look at politicians and leaders all around the world, they basically dwell in the Manipura chakra, the solar plexus, right? So they have a yearning for control of others, and they are possessed by greed and so forth and so on. So it's not about healing the chakra. Also, the chakras are energetic centers that we either dwell. Now, when you're talking about self-esteem and confidence, you have to be talking more about getting up into the heart chakra. Now, what I mean by that is when you're in the heart chakra, you don't actually you don't feel that you need to be defined by self-esteem and confidence, because once you're living from the heart, you're innately confident and you don't have any sort of sense of insecurity. You don't have any insecurity, right? So that's what's important in the chakra system. Now, you got to try to get rid of that idea of healing the chakras. Yeah, the chakras are psychological centers or bioenergetic centers that we dwell in. So you need to really think about that. Yeah. Well, we got a few more super chats. Who we got here? Sonia, thank you. Mike, Mike in the house, the king of North Carolina. I am reading I Am That by Sri Nisargadatta. It's almost as good as Effortless Living. Mike, thank you, brother. That's a big compliment. I'm glad you like I Am That. Yeah, that's awesome. It can be a bit of a meaty read. Yeah, bit of a meaty read. It's a lot bigger than some of the books on Ramana Maharshi and other sages of that time. So, but I'm really happy that you are reading that. And I'm also glad you liked Effortless Living, don't get me wrong. So, wow, these questions, this is awesome. Keep it going, people. AD, hi. Hey, AD, thank you. Hi, sir. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name. That's in, what script is that? Is that Burmese? Sri Lankan? I don't know. Tobin, home is sacred and so is nature. I must get out in nature every day. Oh, that's, yeah, no doubt. No doubt. That's one big problem, Cameron, that a lot of us don't get out in nature every day. A lot of us don't see the moon every night. Don't even see the clouds in some cities. So, Sonia, thanks, Jason. I live in the middle of nowhere in the desert, so that helps. Yes. I thought that, Sonia. I really did think that. So, Lyle, hi, AD. Yeah, AD is one of the old loyal brigade. Another super chat in the house. Rebecca, thank you, Rebecca. Much love and appreciation to you, my friend. Thank you for the awesome questions. Like I said, everyone, I'll try to get to your questions. I'm looking through them. There's a lot there, but we'll get there. What's the difference between Advaita Vedanta and Vishishta Advaita Vedanta? Okay, this is a great question. Advaita Vedanta is strict non-dualism, and Vishishta Advaita is qualified non-dualism. So differences, the basic difference, I explained this actually in my Advaita Vedanta video, if you would like to go and see, but the basic difference is Advaita Vedanta, strict non-dualism, is that there is nothing else. There is only Brahman. There has only ever been Brahman. Sure, we're playing this. I'm doing this now with my hands, and you guys are watching and looking at this clown, and and so forth and so on. But there's only ever been Brahman, and so that's the realization of Advaita Vedanta, of non-duality. The idea of the persona, the ego, is an illusion and does not exist. It's very similar to Buddhism, right? Like, and it's ironic that elements of Buddhism, like Mahayana Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta, kind of developed in similar time frames, where Vishishta Advaita is kind of like, yes, the world is non-dual, the world is Brahman, but we experience it through the world of form. Yeah. So this is where Saguna Brahman comes in. So the Advaita Vedanta tradition is full Naguna Brahman. Yeah. There's only Brahman. Yeah. It's Brahman without qualities, where the Vishishta Advaita tradition is Saguna Brahman, which is Brahman with qualities. So Jason does exist. You do exist. We're doing all of these funny things in our life, but ultimately, deep down, we are Brahman. It's very similar in some sense to Taoism, Vishishta Advaita, because they're both sort of paths of qualified non-dualism as opposed to strict non-dualism. And look, Advaita Vedanta was one of the first schools that I was schooled in. But what I've learned over time is that it can be difficult for a lot of people to follow, because let's say the Advaita Vedanta path was a realization of the ancient rishis, and the rishis lived in a certain way as opposed to the life that we live now. Now, we don't want to make that a cop-out, but there is some truth to that, right? Which is kind of similar to what Sonia was speaking about before. So, Jet Tet, I'm surrounded by woods and I love it. Oh, yeah. Nothing like the woods, my friend. Another super chat in the house. Damien, Will Pitts. Damien, thank you. Are you aware of the concept of the egg by Andy Weir? If so, are there correlations to Hinduism and Buddhism? Damien, I'm not familiar with that concept of the egg, sorry, by Andy Weir, if I'm saying his name right. There are correlations, to answer your question, there are correlations with Hinduism and Buddhism, and they are more experiential as opposed to philosophical. And I get a lot of pushback sometimes on this, but if we look at the ultimate states, so to speak, in both traditions of Atman being the self or the undifferentiated consciousness, in Hinduism, as opposed to Anatman, which is the non-self in Buddhism, which again is undifferentiated consciousness. And so the problems happen when we translate this in English, particularly. I mean, there are the understandings in both traditions that are different. Kimberly, thank you for being with us. Thank you, my friend. Hope to see you again next time. And so there are these differences philosophically, Damien, and in terminology. But the deeper you go into your practice, the more similar that you understand these states of consciousness are the same in each tradition. I remember Swami Sarvapriyananda, when he went to speak at Harvard, there was a Tibetan Buddhist monk there that he met. And then he kind of said, they were talking about this. And then the Tibetan monk said, it's the same thing anyway, isn't it, really? So, and then they both had a laugh. So they're framed differently. The concepts in the philosophy, Damien, are framed differently, but a lot of the tradition, a lot of the experiences are the same, the deeper experiences, because it's all undifferentiated consciousness. Now, you got to remember that Buddhism, in some sense, is an outgrowth of Hinduism. Gautama the Buddha was Hindu, right? And he became the Buddha. And so, and this is why actually in Hinduism, the ninth avatar of Vishnu is believed to be Gautama the Buddha. So Hinduism again, they're both dharmic paths. So the Dharma is is the crux. But the Dharma is defined differently between both traditions. So, but, again, Buddhism is an outgrowth of Hinduism. I wouldn't take it as far as what Alan Watts said. Alan Watts once said that Buddhism is like Hinduism for export. I wouldn't take it that far because, as we know, Hinduism has traveled overseas, and it is popular in certain places around the world that aren't India. And so, but in saying that, it's they do correlate, and more so than what you think. Experientially, the philosophical frameworks are different. The moral dispositions are pretty much the same, because you do find ahimsa, karuna. So ahimsa, non-harming; karuna, compassion. All of these tenets within both traditions, especially when we also look at yoga in Buddhism, right? Yoga is a part of Hinduism. And so when you look at the yogic tradition and you look at Buddhism, then there's a lot of similarities when you look at the 8 limbs of Buddhism and you look at the moral tenets of Buddha. The moral tenets of yoga and the moral tenets of Buddhism. Music Dragon, Shauna, thank you. Much love to all. Shauna, Music Dragon, thank you. Lyle, thank you so much. Love and appreciate all of you. Damien, I hope that somewhat answers your question. That's one that I could go on and on and on about. Yeah. Everyone, there's 73 in the house, only 79 thumbs up. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. And remember, everyone, if you want to watch the replay of this live stream, it's only exclusive on Patreon. So if you're interested in becoming a member to unlock some exclusive content, then the replay of the live streams are exclusive on Patreon. So let's go back up. Oh, wow, we got a lot of questions. So if I miss your questions, it's because there are a lot. Fernando, thank you. Fernando, thank you for being with us. Shraddha, thank you. Everyone's saying thank you. I don't know. Thank you. All right. Pura Vidya Wellness. How do I study without becoming obsessed with what I'm studying? I've been noticing unhealthy patterns of obsession with myself lately. Any thoughts? Yeah, you don't want to be obsessive with your study, Pura. In saying that, you don't also want to be flimsy with your study, right? You have to find this balance between a healthy relationship with your study going forward. And I'm assuming you're studying the Eastern traditions because you're on this live stream. But you don't want to turn your study just into becoming a bookworm, right? And trying to read 1,000 books a year and so forth and so on. You do want to engross yourself with the great texts, but you also don't want to overburn that. So you got to develop space. This is just an intuitive thing. If you find that you're becoming obsessive, then what's the best medicine? You got to pull the pin. You got to pull the pin, and you've got to then dedicate a certain amount of time each day or each week to whatever study you're doing, and keep it at that, and don't go too far into that, right? Because this excessiveness is something that doesn't just filter into our study. It's a bad habit of modern society, where modern society has become very excessive because we want more food, we want more money, we want more of everything. When the ancients are advising, you want less of this, you want less of that, and that then in having less makes the quality of your study a lot better. Yeah, as opposed to cramming a lot in. A lot of people, when they're at university, for example, we all know this, is that when university students are cramming stuff in, you're only memorizing, you're not really learning. And so when you're talking about the Eastern traditions, you don't want to memorize, you want to learn. And so there's a fine line between that. If you're just cramming, you're only memorizing. So you need to develop a bit of space there, Pura. Travis, I've listened to The Seven Secrets of Shiva by Devdutt Patnaik. which has led me to study the similarities between Kashmiri Shaivism and Vedanta. Can you speak a little on this topic? Travis, this is a very difficult one to speak on. There aren't many differences between Kashmiri Shaivism and Vedanta, but it's so difficult to talk about that one, Trav. A lot of people prefer Kashmiri Shaivism to Vedanta because of its. It can be, in some sense, more practical, especially considering that when we talk about Vedanta, we're talking about Advaita Vedanta. So most of the time, we're talking about Advaita Vedanta. So it can be more like confronting, so to speak, right? Where Kashmiri Shaivism can be a little bit more softer in its approach, and is in some sense can be related to a little bit of Vishishtavaita, as I was mentioning before. But the similarities, there are a lot of similarities between both. Differences are not that many. And off the top of my head, I try to remember everything, right? Off the top of my head, I can't say something at the moment, but let me ruminate on that, Trav. Let me ruminate on that one. Chill Dragon. Hey, Jason, I'm doing my minor in philosophy. I'm writing a paper on Eastern religion in the West. What do you think draws Western people to Eastern religions philosophy? Chill, I think that Alan Watts summed this up back in the 60s and 70s. He said that in the West, we were tired of the Abrahamic view of the world. Now, what he means by that is that the West had got to a place where we weren't dependent on the religion running the country, so to speak. So, most nations became more secular and so forth and so on, which allowed Western people to, have a peek over the fence and look at other traditions and religions and philosophies. But the idea of a monarchical God was something that was not God as a ruler. When I say monarchical God as a king, was a tradition that was really becoming outdated in the West, and we yearned for deeper understandings. And it also relates to our scientific endeavor in the West, especially our scientific endeavor on the mind. So when you go into the mind sciences in the West, naturally you lead into Eastern philosophy because they were the first to explore the nature of consciousness. And so when you are studying something, it's better to go and look at a tradition that's been doing it for thousands of years, right? And see what their revelations were. And so that's, I think, where the West are currently, is that the Eastern spiritual traditions are, in some sense, more exotic, more appealing. They have a greater sense of simplicity to them, a greater sense of understanding the universe, which I think to anyone from any part of the world who has intelligence, it's appealing, right? It's appealing, and no one can deny it. Whereas the Abrahamic faiths, and we know this through the rates of Christianity, especially in the decline of Christianity in Europe and the rise of Eastern spirituality in Europe, it speaks for itself, right? I remember when there was a statistic when the Europeans were in India, for example, and Hinduism started to filter out into Europe, right? It became a big thing in the Netherlands and places like this. So there's just a deeper appeal because we're dealing with the nature of consciousness, as opposed to giving our energy away to an idea of a God that's ruling us that we don't really know is. But what we do know is that we are conscious and we have a mind. And so the Eastern spiritual traditions deal with this, the mind-body complex, as the actual laboratory. And then ideas of Brahman and this and that come later, right? So that's part of the appeal. Obo, I'm with us too, J-Man. Obo, thank you for being with us. Love it, my friend. Remember, it's 85 thumbs up, everyone. Let's get it to 100 thumbs up. 64 in the room. Love and appreciate everyone. Rebecca, I haven't heard it from anybody, just my experience. I am wondering if the mindfulness is not as helpful without self-compassion. They definitely better if they go hand in hand together, Rebecca. There is no doubt about that. Because the part of the problem, Rebecca, is that a lot of samskaras, like subconscious, subliminal mental impressions that we have deep within our subconscious, sometimes can't be resolved if we're only practicing mindfulness as well. Now, in saying that, if you're fortunate enough to be in a monastery, those sorts of things will begin to thin out. But if you're living in society and you're living around people, then self-compassion is important in that sense, because then you can deal with those impressions that confuse your reality. W Bear 3. Jason, thoughts on the ego of having no ego? Like, look at me, how spiritual I am. Sort of related to spiritual one-upsmanship. How would we overcome this? Well, this is why I spoke to that individual before, W Bear. It's the game of spiritual one-upsmanship comes from the competitive mind, and it's a big thing in the West. Now, we've got to remember, competition is not an inherent, like, the over competition is not an inherent part of Eastern cultures in their ancient form. So, sure, there were philosophical debates. There's no doubt about that, but they never got into games of, like, undermining other people to showcase their own spirituality, which is what you find in the West, unfortunately. So, the way to overcome this is simple. If you have no ego, you don't play this game at all. That's the end of the story. So if you are playing spiritual one-upsmanship, it means the ego is existing and you are operating from the ego. You are operating from individualism. I've had a lot of strange comments on the channel recently. A lot of you probably don't see these because the comments are all over all sorts of videos, but there's been individuals on here saying, I've been enlightened for 2 decades. I am free from karma. And it's like, oh, no. If they had said that in a monastery and ashram, they would be moved on because they're not ready for the spiritual path. Again, who is the one that validates anything like that? It's the ego. The self does not need, or there is no individual. The Atman is undifferentiated consciousness. It's not a individual. Others may turn or may language and may verify that individual is enlightened, but the individual themselves doesn't exist. So if someone says that I am enlightened or they're playing these games of one-upsmanship, W Bear, they're just operating from the sense of persona. So best medicine to that is just to, like, hold back your laughter and move on. Grizzly Adams, do Taoists believe in evolution? I believe they think we are not separate from the natural world. Yeah, of course. Of course, my friend. Taoism is, it's a natural methodology. You got to remember that. Taoism, natural methodology. And so they understand that the universe is actually an organism, is organic. So evolution goes hand in hand, Kimberly, I'm not sure if you're still here, Ohio, but let me know. Anita G, you're amazing. Thank you, Anita. Yasmin Gonzalez, no. Okay. Uday Patel, great to join the live stream. Your videos are very informative. Uday, thank you, my friend. Gratitude for you being here. Lyle, in the Tao Te Ching translation by Jia Feng and Jane English, your best recommendation for understanding and insights into Taoism. Is it Tao Te Ching translation? Oh, sorry. I read that wrong, Lyle. Sorry. Is the Tao Te Ching translation by Jia Feng and Jane English your best recommendation for understanding and insights into Taoism? That's difficult to say, Lyle. There are many books. Hard to say best recommendation. Obviously, the Tao Te Ching isn't. You need to read the Tao Te Ching if you're interested in Taoism, but you also need to read the Zhuangzi text. You gotta remember, the Taoism is built on Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi, and so I highly recommend the complete works of Zhuangzi, the Burton Watson translation. Burton Watson was an amazing translator. He's no longer with us, but a beautiful man, and his translation of the Zhuangzi is amazing. He really gets into the essence of Zhuangzi's mind in that. And so you have to, those two specifically are very important to read. Those two translations well, the one that you mentioned and what I just mentioned with the Zhuangzi. And also, I would say read a few extra books on just the ins and outs of Taoism, so to speak. To promote my book, Effortless Living, I think it's a fair book to read for yourself on that. I would recommend Hans-Georg Maueller's work. His book, what's the name of that book? The Philosophy of the Tao Te Ching. It's a bit older, but that's not a bad book to read. Genuine Pretending by Hans-Georg Maueller. And I'll let you guys in on a secret. But as you know, as you probably all know, I've been writing my new book on Taoism. I just began the 6th chapter yesterday. I think that this book, I spent the last week organizing the rest of this book, like mulling over notes and looking at the direction loosely of where I'm going with this book. And I think it'll be about 9 chapters. So I'm probably not far off. I'm probably a month off. And then the anxious editing process will begin. And then I'll get it out to publishers and so forth and so on. But that book, I'm doing my best to address Taoism as it is. And I'm going into some new areas that some people haven't gone into. So, and again, when we speak about Taoism, we want to speak about, a lot of people will conflate Taoism just with like Tai Chi Chuan and practices like that. But Taoism is a philosophical tradition first and foremost. And that's what I try to explain in this book. In saying that, the practices and that can enhance your alignment with the Tao, so to speak, not to sound new agey about it, but you catch my drift. And so that book, I can't wait for you all to read it. Unfortunately, knowing the publishing industry, it probably won't be published until 2023. So, and I don't want to say anything about it because better to leave it as it is. But as for the other books, as I mentioned, Hans-Georg Maueller's work. Oh, there's so many. Like trying to think. Lyle, did you see? I don't know if you saw my recommended reading list I put out last week, but if you go to my website, you'll find the recommended reading list, and the first section is actually Taoism. Super chat in the house. David Holland, thank you, my friend. Appreciate you. Hope you're having a good day, Dave. Keep the questions coming, people. I love this. All right. What do we got here? Simon, good to see you, Simon. Good seeing you live, Jason. Thank you. Hope you're well. Yes, I am. Hope you're well too, Simon. Could I ask what your definition of a mystic is, please? Well, a mystic is someone who's transcended the persona complex, right? And what I mean is by transcended is that their life is not governed by the ego anymore, right? They operate from a deeper reality, and are connected to something much deeper. And so that, which means they're really untouched by the world. And so that's what a mystic is. They're not possessed, and they don't have a belief in their identity. And so they move through the world without being stuck and without, having the impressions of the world influence their life. So, I mean, there's so many things that I could say about the mystic, but like, that's kind of what the mystic is. A mystic is someone who transcends their persona. And you can see it in their eyes, actually, Simon. You can see it in their eyes. That I've met many mystics in my time, and there's no hint of arrogance in them. There's no hint of this or that. They just look at you purely as you are, really. Obo, I'm from a place called Texas. Obo, I know Texas. Have you ever seen Rawhide, the series? No, I haven't. Is it a good series? Let me know, Obo. Sadhu, I love your enlightenment today. Ad in the videos at the beginning with the suit and the Buddha. Thank you. That was old school. Oh, we got another super chat. Travis in the house. If we free ourselves from the cycle of reincarnation, and this is our last life cycle, is there awareness in the beyond? Are there writings on this topic? Well, there are. Yeah, there are, Trav. As I said, the Nidhyasana text, so the Mandukya Upanishad Kataka, and the one I would recommend that you buy is by Swami Nikhilananda. Also, the Ashtavakra Gita, but I would recommend the actually there's a version, it's called Ashtavakra Samhita, and also one of my favorite texts of all time, and I'm actually going to do a meditation series on this very soon to let you all in on a secret, is the Avadhuta Gita. And so those texts, Trav, go into what the beyond is. Now, what the awareness of the beyond is, so to speak. But also, if you want to understand also the Bardo plane, so if you want to understand the Bardo plane is the plane of existence. So after death, there's what the Tibetans call the Bardo plane. Egyptians kind of spoke about this a little bit too. And if you want to understand that, I highly recommend, obviously, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. There are many good versions of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. But also, Trav, you got to think about, like, is there awareness in the beyond? There's only awareness. So all that there ever has been is Purusha, right? Is pure awareness, which is the essence of Atman. And so what the great sages would say to us, like Gaudapada or Shankara or the Dattatreya, all of these great sages, was that we can experience that just right here, right now. But your awareness has to be completely unstained. Yeah, no sense of personhood. And this is why, in some sense, the Dattatreya tradition, the Advaita Vedanta tradition, can be very confronting for people because, well, you are completely dissolving the sense of self, so I hope that sort of answers your question. Let's have a look. David, I'll answer your question, Dave, because you gave a super chat first before I get back to the rest of them. David Holland says, do you plan to host a retreat to the east at some point? Yes, I do. I do, Dave. I'm hoping the plan was to start retreats the second quarter of 2022. Now, the ones that Guyang and I we've already got the template for you guys. Is Northern Thailand, Nepal, and 2 in India. One is the Buddhist pilgrimage in northern India, and also the Shiva pilgrimage in southern India. Let me know which one you're interested in, Dave. I don't know, because I know you're all from different countries, and I know this whole situation is a bit strange in other countries. Some governments clamping down on totalitarianism and so forth and so on, and not giving people their free rights and everything like that, right? Um, so it's going to be tricky, and I'm just hoping in 2022 common sense prevails, the world goes back to normal, and everyone can get on with their life, and especially in poorer nations where they can get on with their life and make a living, apart from just dying on the street without having any ability to make an income, which no one seems to talk about in the media. So fingers crossed, Dave, that back in second quarter of 2022, if it is second quarter 2022, then I will let everyone know in December. Earliest I'll be able to let people know about that. As I said, I've got everything set. The tours are set. The dates are set. I just can't say anything about it because I don't know what the situation. I have to also think about my situation here because, the state that I'm in, Queensland in Australia, has basically become a prison. No one can get in. No one can get out. Anyway, that's another conversation. All right, let's go back up, have a look. Good questions. Love all the questions, people. Thank you. Brian K., when we abide in the Atma and the superficial world falls away, you hit the nail on the head, my friend. Sadhu, when will the Kali Yuga end to the Golden Age? Well, if you look at the traditional text of the Puranas, Sadhu, then we have a long, long time to wait. We are the current Kali Yuga. If you look, not everyone believes in the Yugas, so I'm saying it from the Puranas, the perspective of the Puranas, that the current Kali Yuga began in 3102 BCE, and the Kali Yuga is the smallest Yuga, but it runs for 438,000 years. So strap in. Cameron Tobin, watching from Indiana, Midwestern girl, love it. Have been lucky enough to travel, but never to the East. It would be a dream. Talk about a place that would fit my psychology. Cameron, it definitely would. And hopefully I can share that experience with you, my friend, hopefully in the future. Rebecca, yes, that is the problem I have found with spiritual communities, and I've become more of a loner. Still want connection with like-minded folks like you. Yes, Rebecca, of course. It's the best when you really do meet like-minded people, yeah. It really is. You know why it's the best for people like you and I and everyone in the chat is because it's such a rarity, right? It's such a rarity in the world where you can have a very fruitful conversation and your hearts are on the same level. It's a real rarity where you notice that most of the people who, in the mundane world do have connection with each other, but it's all really based on like association, on like particular news they resonate with, and, familiarity with an environment and so forth and so on. Nancy, needing clarity on the subject of unconditional love and acceptance and maintaining healthy boundaries with family members with addiction and toxic behavior. Thank you so much for being here for us. Nancy, thank you so much. These questions can be very difficult to answer without more context, but I can give you a broad sort of way of looking at it. It's always difficult with family members, right? Because we are also expected to act a certain way in the family, if you can believe it, right? We are all expected to act a certain way. Our path on the spiritual path is what you said: have unconditional love, have acceptance, but comes with a big but, is that part of the spiritual path is also you don't want to incur harm on others, but you also don't want others to incur harm on your own spiritual progress. And so you need to have an intuition and a bit of discernment between how much someone is encroaching on your life, no matter who they are, right? I've had family members who, for whatever reason, changed their attitude with me. And, we went our separate ways. It's just the way it is. So that can be life. Yeah, that can be life. People change, focuses are different. And on the spiritual path, for yourself, Nancy, I'm assuming that this is it for you, right? Like, so this is your everything, as it is for me and probably everyone else in here. So if family members and friends and this and that can't accept you for the path that you are on, then sometimes relationships become problematic. So in some sense, like creating a distance, but a healthy distance is good in those relationships. Not that you're completely dissociated from the person, but you've got a healthy distance enough that their toxicity doesn't affect your life. And also you don't annoy them as well. Because, something that we don't consider is that the way that we are annoys these sorts of people too, right? I've noticed that with my family, and it's not that you go around like Bible thumping and Bible bashing. It's just that you're different. You're quieter. You're not so concerned about the things that they're concerned about. And that can annoy people, right? So another super chat in the house. Michael Templeton. Michael, thank you, my friend. Michael's a Patreon. Thank you, Michael. Good to see you in the chat. Keep these awesome questions coming, people. Love it. Night Mower. You're from Indiana too. Wow, Indiana representing the house. Usually we got a lot of people from North Carolina. Rebecca, yes, I felt culture shock when returning from India and felt at home there. Every time you come back from India to the West, it's like everyone that I've known, Rebecca, they always go, I just want to get straight back on the plane. Art, spot on. I live in the USA. I'm originally French, but having lived in Japan, I remember that, Art, you telling me that. My heart feels tethered to Japan. I realize that Japan is embedded in Confucianism. Yeah. But some other intangible aspects of love, I love. It's still all those Far Eastern Asian countries have the subtle psychology of Confucianism. But what I like about Japan is it didn't let the Abrahamic faiths, infiltrate, and so you have more of a focus on Zen Buddhism. Shintoism is still alive in Japan, but Buddhism is a big thing, specifically Zen Buddhism in Japan. And for those of you who don't know, I highly recommend looking up the Shikoku path or the Shikoku Buddhist pilgrimage. Now, that's something that's on Guyang and I, that's on our bucket list. We just have not had the opportunity to do that. But there's something like 88 temples or something on this pilgrimage. And it takes, I might be wrong here, but it might take a month to walk. And I just love to do it. I think it'd be amazing. I love trekking personally. You guys probably don't know this about me, but I do personally love trekking and walking for long periods of time. It's a great meditation. And especially when it's a specific pilgrimage. One of the best pilgrimages I've ever done, trek, was the Annapurna circuit in the Himalayas in Nepal. And wow. I met a lot of teachers on that path. There were sadhus up in the upper Mustang area that were just have been living in caves on the Tibetan plateau. You have no idea. Miles and miles and miles and miles away from any other person. So, I mean, it doesn't get any better than that for me. Sue, thank you for compiling a list of book recommendations. Sue, thank you. I'm so glad you appreciate. Jay Lewis, and I thank you. Jay, thank you. Ms. Zen, over time, I realized that the impermanence of the self, and what Thich Nhat Hanh meant when he said that there was no Rain Man. Yes. The core attribute of pure awareness would be silence and stillness. Yes. And I think you, like Thich Nhat Hanh, yes, I love silence. Silence is a great book. Could you tell us about it? How was it? How it has helped you in your practice? Silence is a wonderful book by Thich Nhat Hanh because it speaks to also the modern person, and especially the most of us who are sort of caught in a socialization process. And so I made a video actually about the 4 nutrients of Buddhism, which was based on silence, which is an aspect of Buddhism itself. And what I really liked, as I said, Thich Nhat Hanh addresses the modern individual. So how we ruminate on our thoughts, how we're constantly doing. I mean, the book is a Zen / Taoist book. Trying to, because I read that book actually 7 years ago in a sense. My main takeaway was the 4 nutrients. So I recommend going and watching that video. You'll find it, if you just probably search it, you'll find it, for the 4 nutrients in Buddhism. And yeah, you'll love it. Rebecca, I was there in India in 1985, 91. Wow. Rebecca, that's awesome. It must have been so wonderful back in the day too, I reckon. Sonia, that is huge. It definitely is huge, Sonia. I told you guys in the last live stream, nothing makes me more happier when I'm in somewhere like when I'm living in Tiruvannamalai, for example, and I'll go to a restaurant with a guy, and restaurants in India are not like how you think in America or Europe or wherever you're from, but they're very grounded and not so fancy. But what's really fantastic is like we'll be in there enjoying a tea or having a meal, and then like a young guy or a young girl would come in, a foreigner too, and they would be carrying under their arm, "I am that." And I used to it brings a smile to my face because I just know the trajectory of that individual is on the path. I mean, they would have to plead ignorance if they weren't after reading a book like that. Not just that one, like obviously when some people are reading like something like Be As You Are by Ramana Maharshi. Personally, Be As You Are is probably one of my favorite books of all time. But Ramana is someone I hold dear to my heart. So, yeah, it gives me hope for humanity when I see people like that. Luther, are there some yogis who do not eat food at all? Is it necessary for all people to get the energy from eating, or is it possible to just live off prana? Have you heard of? Yes, I've heard of breatharians. This is a difficult one, Luther, because personally, I've never met anyone who doesn't eat. The yogis that I know, especially in Uttarakhand, like Rishikesh and Dehradun and these areas, like in the Upper Ganga area, they eat food, right? They eat small quantities of food, yeah, and they do practice. They do harness more of prana than probably the average Joe, but not eating altogether. There was one yogi that was on Indian TV back in the day. I can't remember his name, and they said he had not ate for. Now I might be getting this wrong, but you could probably do a Google search. 80 years, and there's video footage of him, and he does look very thin, right? And the doctors there said he had not had any food for 80 years. And what develops, they say, in these types of yogis, if you believe this, is they develop like this thing in their, like I can't remember what it is, but like a thing in their throat, which like is kind of a natural growth or something that gives them sustenance. I don't know if there's much truth to that, obviously, because as I said, I've never met any of these people personally. But the yogis in that I do know, they do eat and so forth and so on. The breatharians, I don't know so much about. I think a lot of that can be a bit new agey. The breatharian movement. Don't get me wrong, I don't know much about it. I don't focus a lot on that. I mean, for me, I follow the simple path. If you're hungry, eat something. So don't let it impede your spiritual practice. And to be honest, if you're just focusing on breath, that's not really, you're just focusing on one area of spirituality. If you want to focus on something, bringing prana and chi into the system, think about, if we look at a lot of the old yogic and Taoist texts, the simple practice of breathing through your heels. If you guys do it right now, you start breathing through your heels, you'll feel chi and prana build in your system. That's a little secret practice. The difference is according to a lot of the scriptures, is that those who are sages continually breathe through their heels. Those who aren't breathe through their bellies. AD, great question, AD. UG Krishnamurti asserts that any attempt to get enlightenment is futile because it is thoughts based, and that the natural state is precisely prior to them. This is true. This is very true. But in saying that, AD, we can't escape speaking about it. Yeah. And that's also something that we need to talk about, because there is a state that we call enlightenment, but we can't, to have that, to return to that original state, it's not like a thinking endeavor. So the enlightenment isn't a thought. The reason the enlightenment is a state, as our original nature, right? Like we use the word enlightenment, and then it gets caught up in our thinking and thought complex, and then it becomes a goal and an object and a thing that we ought to aspire to have, right? So, it's interesting that who has read this book, Enlightenment Now, Liberation as Your True Nature. So there's one part there's one chapter there but I won't read it because I won't bore you guys, but enlightenment is natural, not artificially induced. So anyway, if you guys want me to read some of that, then let me know. If you don't, if you want to just keep doing Q&A, all well and good. But yeah, I think you get my picture, AD. Eric F., thank you for all your knowledge, wisdom on your podcast with your wife. Eric, thank you. Appreciate you, my friend. And Guyang always extends, her well wishes to you guys. And I want to let you guys know, when we get to 50,000 subscribers, we'll do a friendly Q&A, and Guyang will join me. So it'll be like a little tea party for everyone, huh? So probably won't be that serious, but just to thank everyone. And guys, if you aren't subscribed, make sure you subscribe, because I was going to have this live stream today with subscribers only, but I noticed on the analytics that most of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribed. And so I don't know why that is. So hopefully you can subscribe, because what I have heard is that the silly YouTube robot starts to recommend content if a lot of subscribers watch the person's material. So if you're not subscribed, I hope you consider subscribing. It doesn't matter, in the end of the day, but it could help the channel, and it could help maybe my channel find the people it needs to find. So. 64 on the house, 99 likes. Give us a thumbs up, everyone. Let's get it over 100. Appreciate the support. Hello, Jason from Canada. Great to see you. Going live again. Really enjoy these and your podcast. All the best, brother. Guy Broseph, thank you, my friend. Thank you for being there. Always good to see your name. Let's keep going. All right. Damien, thank you, Jason. I've been a long-time listener, and your words have already helped me towards my blissful experience. Thank you, Damien. Music to my ears, my friend. Thank you so much for being there, and it means a lot. It really means a lot. It means a lot to me, to Guy Young as well. To just that I can share this knowledge, and that there are people out there, sincere people like yourself, Damien, who are really grounded and ready for the knowledge. So it's wonderful. Kura in the house. Aotearoa. Thank you, my friend. I'm so glad you enjoy it. Hope New Zealand is well today. Kia ora. Sanjay Sharma, as a Hindu, I believe doctrine of Buddha is true, and all later Hinduism is influenced by Buddha's teachings. A lot of people do think that, Sanjay. A lot of people think that actually Vedanta or Advaita Vedanta was influenced by the teachings of the Buddha. And then you'll have the Vedantists say the other way around. I don't think it's anything to really make of it yet. It's interesting to look at. I think what's important are the teachings. So Adam Collins, less is more. Spot on, my friend. Partha Pratim Das, nice to meet you. Hello, Jason. I really like your podcast on Taoism. I wonder, we are given this human body, this human form, by the Tao. With the body, we inherit desires. How did the sages go beyond in spite of desires? Well, I talk about this a lot. I've spoken about this in a few videos, that the problem becomes when we have artificial linguistic conventions, right? So when we have artificial linguistic conventions, so what I mean by that is when we have a framework in our mind that is superimposed onto the way nature is, then what happens then is that we create artificial desires. So in returning to nature, Partha, is we return to our natural desires. So this is why in the Tao Te Ching, in chapter 12 of the Tao Te Ching, I think chapter 12, Lao Tzu speaks about the desires of the eye and the desires of the belly. And the desires of the eye are those artificial desires and wants, not needs, wants that are created by the socialization that you are implanted in, right? So think of Madison Avenue, think of the advertising industry and all of this BS that creates artificial desires. So that is part of this artificial superimposition on the naturalness of the world. And so what the sage seeks to do in their endeavor is to return to their original nature. And in returning to their original nature, they return to their natural desires, which are the desires of the belly. And what are the desires of the belly? The simple desires. You need to eat, you need to sleep. Think of Lin Chi, right? The great Zen master Lin Chi, where he said, when someone said, how to get enlightened and this and that, and he said, just be ordinary. Move your bowels, eat your food, get a good sleep. It's not very exciting, right, for a lot of people. I love it though, personally, because in simplicity, that's where the real action begins. So that's really how they went beyond. So in simplifying and returning to the original desires, You are getting out of the artificial linguistic conventions that we've been taught with. And so that's what's important. So we have to remember the whole concept of Maya in Hinduism is a superimposition on reality based on how we measure the reality according to our subjective experience. The sage eradicates the subjective viewpoint. Sonia, yes, that's true. Is Kashmir Shaivism more tantric? Yes, more tantric oriented. That's right. It's very complex to speak about. That's why I have to do a video on Kashmir Shaivism for sure. My tongue's a bit tight on that at the moment because Tantrism can be difficult to explain. Well, the deeper components, broadly we can explain it. I'm Shanti Jason. Nancy, I'm Shanti Jason. Do grateful for you sharing your wisdom. Moksha in Sarasota, Florida. Nancy, thank you so much. Thank you for being there. Obo, Jason, when you do your daily sitting meditation, do you see that as the end of searching, or are you tilling the soil some more, so to speak? Obo, depends on the day. No. My mentality has been for a long time. Mentality it's hard to explain this when you're using words, right? But is not to search for or seek for anything. It's to focus on the practice as it is, as not as a thing for Jason to get from, to achieve, so forth and so on. It's about practicing for the sake of practicing as much as possible. Sure, there are days where it feels like it's tilling the soil, right? Even a spiritual master would say that. Some days, sometimes you need to till the soil. You might have had a bad night, right? So, but in general, it feels more like the end of searching itself. And that's actually should be our focus in, especially meditation practice in spirituality. Look, unless you're in certain spiritual practices, such as movement practices like Tai Chi Chuan, Hatha Yoga, where you do develop in the practice. Now, in saying that, in sitting practice or Zazen, you are developing also in the practice, but the mentality is that there's no sort of goal to reach in the practice. Meditation itself is supposed to get you out. It's supposed to be a time that you give yourself to get out of that achieving and goal-oriented mentality. Pura, thank you, Jason from Toledo, Ohio. You love it. I'm on my Yoga Studios account. Lol. My real name is Erica. Erica, love and appreciate you, my friend. Thank you for being there. Nice to meet you. Thank you for this live stream and your podcast. Thank you dearly, my friend. Damon B, hello from Seattle. How can you talk a bit more about finding your lead? Thanks. Damon, good question. Now, for those of you who don't know, Li in Chinese is an organic pattern that we all have. So you think about like the different leaves, the different grains of wood, they all have a particular pattern, right? Li actually in Chinese, the Chinese always, the older Taoists, they had interesting ways of always translating things. So Li really means like the markings and jade and the grain and wood, or the fiber and muscle. And so what that means is it's a specific pattern that an individual has that's unique to that individual. So in finding the Li, usually you have to return to a simple life, and you have to begin to purge out sort of a lot of the contents of your sense of identity. Now, that may seem problematic, right? Like it may seem like, but then I won't have anything. And it's like, no, that's not what it is from a Taoist perspective. Because if we use the river analogy in Taoism, which is the analogy they use, when you're fighting the current of the river, right, and you're swimming against it, you either drown or, you get swept away. And the art is to let go and to allow the Tao's power, or the river's power in this sense, to become your power. This is virtue, is right? And so once you've let go of this fighting and striving and forcing yourself, and also the belief in your identity, or the strong belief in your identity, then you'll begin to come into harmony with which is virtue. And virtue is what drives Li, drives the pattern. So that's actually how you discover your Li, so to speak. Look, this is the natural way of discovering your own pattern. Sure, I can get you from birth and train you as a violinist from 3 years old, right? And you'll be pretty good at 10, right? But this may not have been what is natural to you. And you may not even like playing the violin at 10. You might be like, oh man, I'm sick of this. So that's what it really is, Damon. It's about, so you've got to let go of yourself. You've got to dive deeper into your meditation. You've got to start to let go things of yourself and stop forcing yourself on life. And in practicing Wu-Wei, so non-interference, non-doing, sort of effortless action, things come easy to you. It's like a door and key analogy, right? When you're forcing the key doesn't move. You jiggle it a little, the door opens, right? So, and that's how we are psychosomatically. So our consciousness is like that. It's effortless, but we are accumulating a sense of self, and we're forcing that on others, and also living from that in our own life, which gets in the way of discovering your Li. So, super chat in the house. Mike. You're always so generous, Mike. Thank you. I missed part of the first half of this evening's live stream. I think you said the recording will be available for talks for your folks, Patreon folks. Yes. I love this Q&A. Thanks for bringing this community of folks together. Mike, thank you, brother. Thank you. I always appreciate seeing you, Mike. And yes, the Patreon live stream replay is exclusive to Patreon. So I usually take these lives down after the live because, well, it's basically a live. So having a live stream after the fact doesn't really make sense. But for those who want to see the live streams exclusive, then replays, then they are on Patreon. That's right, Mike. Thank you so much. I actually think you're a patron, aren't you, Mike? I can't remember. Anyway, I'm pretty sure you are. Look at these questions. So good. Hope you're all having a good night tonight, wherever you are. Daniel Stewart. Hey, Dan. Good to see you. Big Tate Man. Here he is, Big Man Tate. Hello, Jason. Just got here and heard the conversation. I used to think I was enlightened and would speak like I was. I made a fool of myself. Well, we've probably all been there, Mike, in some sense, haven't we? In our youth, maybe. Though someone recently, Tate, on my channel has been saying they're enlightened and this and that, and they are an older individual, which is interesting. Each to their own, I guess. Would you say Big Tate Man? Here we go. Not sure how to move on from that because I think a lot of people got the wrong idea and believed my ego BS. I guess I just live humbly and be with the Tao as a living example, not a fake spiritual guy. Yeah, 100%. Hit the nail on the head. Sonia, can you suggest a text of Shankara to start with? Definitely, Sonia. I would highly recommend Self-Knowledge, Atma Bodha. That's a Swami Nikhilananda translation. Also, the Viveka Chudamani, which is the crest, in English, we would say the crest jewel of discrimination. Now, I think the Vivekachudamani, the translation I would recommend is, I think it's Swami Pravananda, and Christopher Isherwood writes the foreword, I think. Yes. But definitely those two. Those two, Sonia, you're on your road to moksha. Tai Chi 5. To follow up, Taoism suggests a sort of power of influence in governing when utilizing the Tao. And mention talks about transforming people indirectly through being a true gentleman. Any thoughts? Actually, Taoism doesn't suggest any sort of power of influence in government. The act of governance in Taoism is natural governance, is in allowing the organic world to run its course. That's the type of, and that's where the power of real governance comes from in Taoism. Mencius, on the other hand, even though Mencius has a lot to do with Mencius, that he appears like a Taoist, but he in the end of the day, he is a Confucian. So, and as you said, with true gentleman, it's a Junzi, right? So that's Confucius's idea. So, and the idea about changing people indirectly comes back to the sprouts of what Mencius is talking about. So Mencius has that analogy of Ox Mountain. So the analogy of Ox Mountain is that the sage comes up to Mencius, right? The disciple comes to Mencius and says, you say that our nature is fundamentally good, but look at Ox Mountain. Like, look at all the mountains around Ox Mountain. They're all green. But Ox Mountain is bare and barren. Why is that? And then Mencius says, look where Ox Mountain is. It's right on the edge of a large country. And so people herding goats and that go up there to graze and this and that. But the sprouts and that continue to grow. So this is the idea of that we are fundamentally good. And so this idea of transforming people indirectly, I don't know if that's the right way to say it, because Mencius's idea is that we are all fundamentally good. And so in some sense, he aligns more with Taoism when it comes to governance, as opposed to like having a strict sort of naturalization project, which actually is what Confucianism is, right? Confucianism is basically a socio-political religious philosophy to naturalize that which isn't natural. So that's the crux of what Confucianism is. So Mencius is kind of caught in this middle ground between Taoism and Confucianism. So it can be very difficult to explain that. Obo, I was looking. Oh, we got a super chat in the house. Who's that? Brian in the house again. Grateful for your work, Jason. The 81 Meditations on the Tao Te Ching podcast with Guy are wonderful. Brian, thank you. Thank you. I love your Joe Rogan avatar. Brian, I think this weekend, Guy and I will do the next chapter of the 81 Meditations on the Tao Te Ching. So make sure you tune in on Sunday, yeah? Can't wait to share it with everyone. I hope you guys have been enjoying all the content. Let me know if you have. So Obo said, I was looking at the list of books you recently put out there. I saw one by author Deng Ming Dao. Yes. Love Deng Ming Dao. David, awesome. I will stay tuned. Thank you, David. Rebecca in the house. Rebecca B. She's a loyal fan, a Patreon. Love Rebecca. Travis, thank you, Trav. Appreciate you, my friend. Daniel Flores, have you ever become discouraged on spirituality? Not on spirituality itself. When I was younger, I used to get discouraged about the way people were who say they're spiritual, right? So That used to be very discouraging. And to be honest, I still see that a lot on my channel. And in some sense, like when you sort of come back to your real nature, you're okay sometimes in some sense to be around more ordinary people more than the ones who are trying to be spiritual, right? Like that can be a little bit exhausting for anyone at the best of times, right? When someone's putting on a real big show and theatrics and saying they're enlightened, and you know, I remember once I was at a satsang in Tiruvannamalai about 11 years ago with Muji, and a lady came up and she said, "What do we do about the world? Because we are all these enlightened beings. How will we change the world?" And you saw kind of Muji just, you know, he got a little bit uncomfortable in his chair. He pivoted around it, you know, but so that can be discouraging because, but in saying that, there's insincere people in any field and whatnot, right? So, guys, 61 in the room, 109 thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up. Rebecca, I'm in the Appalachian Mountains of North Carolina. We're here too. Rebecca, thank you so much. Thomas, thank you, Thomas, Southern California. Thomas Rutledge. Music Dragon in Appalachian Mountains too. Near Cherokee. Wow. Art, I'll join the Shikoku pilgrimage for sure. Daniel Flores. Daniel, I don't know really how to say that in that Mexican city's name. How do I say it? Oh, Aguas Calientes. Yes. Big man Tate, walking is the best exercise. I do it daily because it is like meditation. It is. Tate, it's interesting, isn't it? A lot of people these days will run for miles, but they don't even walk these days. They'll go from sitting on their couch, I'm going to the treadmill. Half an hour there and then back to under your couch. Whereas there's a real grace and a real meditative quality to walking. And walking for no purpose. Like the Taoist practice and the Buddhist practice, right, of aimless walking. Zhuangzi would be like this. Now you're starting to understand. Sean, a Music Dragon. I've started a new job at a music instrument store, and I'm finding I have less time for meditation. Any suggestions on short at work meditations? Oh, yeah. Definitely. You can just, Music Dragon, you can just reduce also, depending on, you know, the situation you're in at work, but you can reduce the length of your meditation, but you can make them more frequent to constantly bring your mind back. But again, in saying this, someone like Ramana Maharshi would say, forget about the practice altogether and try to practice meditation in what you're doing, right? Like, so keeping observation of your mind. When something has to be done, do it. But when you're just doing mundane tasks, come back to your meditation practice without having the need to sit in a meditation posture and so forth and so on. Obo. Martin Scorsese made a movie about the failed, although not absolutely, infiltration of Catholicism. Yeah, what was that one? I didn't watch that because I thought it was, you know, I don't usually watch a lot of these Christian movies because usually they glorify Christianity over other traditions and that. So, Rebecca, thank you for the astute answers. Rebecca Sage, thank you. Another super chat. AD, €5. Thank you, AD. Love you, my friend. Appreciate the super chat. Wow, these questions are coming thick and fast. Let's have a look. Len, Good night, man. If you're still there, thank you for joining. I appreciate you staying up in the UK till late. Big Man Tate, just tried breathing through my heels. Never heard of that, but wow, that's a game changer. Big Man, thank you. A lot of people don't even know about a lot of those somewhat simple practices and kind of how we can bring chi and prana into the system. A lot of people just assume it's through like our nostrils and this and that, but it's more about awareness. It's really all about awareness. Rebecca, I just looked up breathing through the heels. That's awesome, Rebecca. AD, I thank you as well. Thank you for the super chat. Rebecca Sage, is it grounding? Is it breathing through heels? Yeah, I guess kind of, yeah. But like instantly when you start to breathe through your heels, as I was mentioning, you're bringing more chi or prana into your system, which, when there's more chi or prana in the system, your mind is more equanimous, and all of the tension and everything begins to loosen up. I was going to say something else. Yeah. But in Taoism, you got to remember, and this is also the case also in the other traditions, is that the Tao, because a Tao in some sense, its nature is nothingness, right? It's stillness. It's what we would call a meontological tradition, so a tradition of nothingness. But the power of the Tao, that's hard for us to describe, it gravitates to that of its own kind. So the more you are empty, the more the Tao gravitates towards that. And so what we're talking about here is the chi of Tao. So when you're breathing through your heels, you're bringing into your system the chi of Tao. And so this is why, I'm so happy that those who tried breathing through their heels actually felt something, because sometimes, say if you get someone on Wall Street whose mind is all, blah, 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 all mashed potatoes, they're not even going to feel anything, because the chi of the Tao can't gravitate there, because it's full. It only gravitates to where there's emptiness. So that's how the Tao makes use of you. Greg Gardenia, 100th like. Greg, thank you. Joe Truck, thank you. Yes. Obo Tea Party. We are on. David Holden, thank you, Jason. Your videos and books have made such a meaningful impact on my spiritual journey. David, thank you so much, my friend. It means a lot. I'm just, I'm just grateful that I can help in some way. Daniel Stewart, can a practitioner of Zen Buddhism live as a sage in the city while navigating through the chaos in a noisy world and still practice mental renunciation? Yes, there's no doubt about it. It's just a little bit more difficult, Daniel. So there's actually I saw this documentary years ago of two Zen monks who live in New York City. But again, they spend most of their time in the actual temple. So they don't really go outside much, maybe to Central Park or somewhere like that. But yes, it can happen. It requires more effort. Hence, ashrams, monasteries are usually in places far away from lots of people. Rebecca Sage, is not human connection a natural desire? Yes, it is. It is a natural desire. But natural desire doesn't mean it's a what do we say? It's an obligation, right? So we are, in some sense, cultural and social animals. But in saying that, the spiritual path is to overcome those evolutionary needs as well, right? Like the reason we are social and cultural animals is because it benefited our evolution as a species to be in groups, to resonate with a particular in group. And when you follow Eastern spirituality, you are kind of coming into what it's like to be in the out group, to be beyond the border, right? And so, which then will diminish your desire for human connection. But if those connections exist, then that's all well and good, yeah. 1 second, people. 1 sec. I'll be back. All righty. Back in the house. No one left. It was a miracle. Christmas miracle. All right, let's have a look. Big Sonia, yes, that would be yes. I'll get to that, Sonia, on Kashmiri Shaivism. Big Man Tate. Hi, Jason. If you have time for another question, how do you take care of our to-do list while being one with the Tao, especially when there's a lot of practical stuff we need to take care of? How do we get stuff done without burning out? I mean, yes, very poignant question, Tate. It's I think that when you're doing something that is not in accord with your nature, that's when the burnout begins to happen, right? It can happen with things that you resonate with as well. There's no doubt about that. But in general, that's how burnout happens. It's when you're doing something that's totally against your nature, and you're, as they say, you're pushing shit uphill, right? So you're trying to make things happen and this and that. You have a to-do list. You got to get things done. But then in the end of the day, you're just burning out your system. You're not one with the Tao. So it can become a lot about what you do and the vocation you do. For myself, I don't ever feel burnout with this because I enjoy this. You know, I love this. So do I feel burnout with other things? Of course. But one thing that is a benefit of what you are talking about is not overly thinking about it. So again, with more practice and with loosening the grip on yourself, the tasks that you have to do just get done in some sense, like what Lao Tzu said, right? When sort of nothing is done, everything gets done. Part of the point there is that the one who is doing it, right? Like, so if you are vexed on doing all of these things, then it can become really torturous and burn you out. But when you're just going from task to task and just doing whatever you need to do without thinking about it or overly thinking about it, not getting into the details of what it is, then it just gets done and it happens, right? This is kind of, in some sense, Wu is kind of effortless action a little bit, right? Like to represent that, we could say, look at an artist or an athlete, right? An athlete will be in the zone, they'll do all their things. Now, in saying that, the athlete resonates with what they do. They are perfectly calibrated to the environment through their skill, and so they can efficaciously perform. But the crux of Taoism is also to live skillfully, right? And so, which means you need to cultivate wu-wei in your everyday life, where you're not overthinking about the to-do list you have today. You're just going one by one. You're not dragging it out. You just, not to sound like a new agey cliche, but you're kind of going with the flow of what's presenting itself. Some people have more trouble with that trait than others too. Yeah. If you're a person who doesn't think a lot, then it is very easy. Ovo depends on the day. Hilarious. I don't know what you're talking about, Ovo. Okay, well, yeah. Luther, do you believe it's beneficial for people to develop psychic, intuitive abilities, clairvoyance, clairaudience, etc.? Will these develop naturally as one spiritually progresses? It's neither beneficial nor not beneficial, Luther. These can be skills that one can pick up in their spiritual practice, but I would be very cautious around this sort of crowd, right? Because there's a lot of new agey information, and a lot of people will use it to make an income and to basically lead you down the garden path. There are ways, for example, like if you are doing tarot, there are ways to read someone's mannerisms and this and that to tell specific feelings, emotions they have to certain experiences, etc. That people who pick up on these tells, they're not really skilled maybe in the tarot, but they're skilled more at just reading body language and this and that, and kind of just going with the flow of the conversation, So again, I'd be careful around this sort of these sort of groups. Psychic abilities and all of that can be distractions on the spiritual path, because people then can think that they have some sort of supernatural skill, and that they're more enlightened than other people, and they're not, obviously. And so, but like if I use the Sanskrit word siddhis, right? Siddhis sort of covers this sort of generic, and I highly recommend everyone go and watch my video on siddhis. But and actually, Goyang and I probably should do a podcast on siddhis, but food for thought. But will these develop naturally as one spiritually progresses? They can, and it happens just with certain people. So, for example, there was a period of time there, and I don't want to say too much about this because it wasn't a big deal to me. It was a big deal to some of my other friends. When before things would happen, I would tell them what was going to happen. And this only happened briefly with a few things. And it was just, but it was more of it was more of that intuitive ability that was probably heightened, and not something attributed to some sort of supernatural thing. They do say a lot in a lot of the meditation texts that through meditation, your intuitive capabilities can be enhanced just like your intellectual capabilities. So it means you have a greater sense of subtleness of the reality you're in, of the environment you're in. And so an ability to kind of read before the fact, so to speak, maybe some things, but it's not always the case, right? So they do say that cities can develop, but they should not be thought of as some sort of evidence of some sort of enlightened capability, or these are just things that happen on the path. They just happen. Mike, love your content. It's wonderful. Yes, I am a patron of. Thank you, Mike. Love it, my friend. I thought you were. AD, what I realized is what we are all part of, the same organism we call the universe, but for itself, it needs no reason for being or becoming. We think otherwise and we suffer. That's right. Big Man Tate, thank you for the answer, Jason. I was in my early 20s at the time. Maybe that's part of the spiritual path, but I've met many older people who claim to be enlightened as well. Yes. That emoji is the curious emoji is perfect for that one. The older people who behave like that, Tate, have usually found spirituality later in life. So I think that there's a maturing process maybe early on in finding spirituality, and it can also come down to misinterpretation. So a lot of the text can be misinterpreted by people who don't have a teacher to guide them on the path. This is what can be problematic with having a lot of the great texts out there, right? There's a few texts in Thailand, for example, in the Theravada tradition, the early Buddhist tradition, about Boron Kamatana, right? Boron Kamatana is what we would call old meditation. And it is actually a psychosomatic meditation. You wouldn't really, often when you talk about Buddhist meditations, right, you don't really talk about the body a lot, right? Like, because it's all inside. But this meditation practice is a mixture of inside and outside. It's a psychosomatic meditation practice, Boron Kamatana. And a lot of the older transcripts for the Boron tradition have gone underground because of the fact that they shouldn't be out there in public discourse. And look, a lot of the debate I have with teachers, not debate, but conversations I have with teachers is about whether texts like the Avadutta Gita or the Ashtavakra Gita or even the Nikayas by the Buddha, if these texts should be freely available to people, because the way it was in the old days was you needed a teacher. You had to go through the process of learning this directly from someone who was schooled by someone else. It's a lineage tradition, right? And so we can say there's some truth to both sides of the coin there, but there are definitely some texts that can be problematic in the hands of people who aren't ready for those texts, right? I know some of these Boron Kamatana texts, though I've never had the chance to read them, but I've read about some of the practices. I've practiced some of the practices. And yes, they are powerful and probably something that I should not personally pass on, or, without any sort of further knowledge on those sorts of practices, So Isabella Stroop, hello, my friend. Rebecca, I also really enjoyed 81 Meditations. Rebecca, thank you. I know that. Jay Lewis, enjoying all. Thank you. Preston Seymour in the house. Namaskar, my brother. Thank you. Good to see you. Surash Kumar, good to see you again. Thank you. Lyle, absolutely loving the content. Thank you, my friend. Taishi, my pleasure. Thank you. Judy, I'm also enjoying the content. Thank you, Judy. I appreciate it. Suresh, love from India. Love it, Suresh. Can't wait to get back to India, my friend. Let me know when it's opening, and I will be there the day of. Travis, love your content. Travis, love you, my friend. Thank you. Big Tape Man, I walk for fun, but many exercise or walk with an agenda and seem really stressed when they do it. This is true. Running especially can damage your body over time. Yes. Running is good, but I think the problem with running is people always begin to take it to the extreme, don't they? Take like, well, I run for half an hour today. What if I run for 2 hours? And then you see people in their older age. I know a lady in my building here, nice lady, and her knees are completely cactus. and she's only early 50s. And, I asked her, like, what happened? And it's just, she was a long distance runner, running on concrete and, hard surfaces. And some people can do it forever. Some people can't. Yeah. So Music Dragon, great answer. Thank you, Music. Travis, Tibetan Buddhism has some ties to tantric practice, doesn't it? Yes, it does, Trav. Tantric, the thing is that you can explore two different ways of tantrism. There's tantric, you could say somewhat tantric Buddhism and tantric Hinduism, but tantricism, the essence is the same. There's a book that I highly recommend. There's Tantra by Georg Fursten. And also, if you look at the yoga tradition by Georg Fursten, he goes deeply into the differences between tantric Buddhism and tantric Hinduism. But in saying that, Tibetan Buddhism, you got to remember, is a combination of, traditionally Tibetan Buddhism is a Mahayana tradition, but it is a combination of Vajrayana Buddhism as well as the Bon tradition. Because we got the Mahamudra, we got the Dzogchen teachings, and so and Tantra, and you've got all of this. And so the irony is a lot of the Tantric teachings are very similar to Vajrayana and Tibetan Bon, the Tibetan shamanism. So it's really crazy. So I actually love exploring that sort of history of the evolution, especially of Tibetan Buddhism, because that's basically of what happens to Buddhism when it went into the mountains, right? So it left the Gangetic plains of Bihar in India and moved up into the Himalayas, and then intermingled with, so Mahayana Buddhism basically became Tibetan Buddhism and also Vajrayana Buddhism from intermingling with the traditional shamanism up there in the day, which I find personally fascinating. Sonia, thank you. Namaste, my friend. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Good to see you. Sophie TT, nice to see you. Hey, Jason, how are you? I'm great. Thank you. I hope you are well. I have a great question. How can I not let my emotions influence too much how I interpret things? I often struggle with this. Well, yes, this is a problem in the world today because people are caught in their emotions. And if you wish to emulate the Tao, then the Tao is without emotions. So now, does that mean emotions are bad? No, because emotions can be beautiful when they are when it's in the sense of feeling, like love and compassion and having this towards other people. But when emotions when you identify with emotions, it means you identify with a certain part of your identity and seek to superimpose that onto someone else or something else, right? So with more meditation practice, the downregulation of emotions naturally happens. And I'm not talking about having like 1 or 2 or 3 20-minute sessions here and there. This can take years. So I don't want to, be a dampener on this, but that's the stone cold truth about it. So what happens is with more meditation practice, because you're observing your mind, is you're loosening the grip on reacting to the emotions, right? It's not that the emotions disappear. They will disappear over time. But at the beginning, it's not that they disappear, but your reaction to the emotion is gone, right? This is what Vairagya is, non-reaction as well, about renouncing the response to the emotion. Does it mean your blood won't boil? It'll boil. It'll be on fire. But what happens is when you don't react to the blood boiling, then there's a psychosomatic change that takes place within your being. That's what really happens. So if you continue to practice that, then you won't continue to interpret reality through your emotions. Yeah, because your emotions are only a part of your identity, and your identity believes the reality is a certain way, and it's not. The old analogy, there's one uh, there's one universe but many worlds, right? When we talk about humans, but you have to eliminate your world, so to speak, to see the reality as it truly is. So, and this happens through more sincere meditation practice, through more study of scriptures, as I mentioned, with, say, for example, the Avadutta Gita, which I highly recommend. And so, we could talk more and more about that. AD, there are all kinds of gurus out there on the spiritual market. Spiritual market. I do not consider you as a teacher, but as a true fellow man on the path, which is more more precious. Thank you, AD. Appreciate it, my friend. Jeremiah, do you think nothingness is actually bright? Like when people die and see the light, they are actually seeing nothing, but it's actually everything. That's Brahma, right? Yes, yes, that's the one undifferentiated consciousness. It's interesting because we intuit it, like when people have near-death experiences and this and that, we intuit that sort of that ultimate reality with our visual faculty, right? So it's always about what we see. So now if we look at it from the perspective of a blind man, what would the blind person see, in air quotes, right? Like, so there's a few different situations. A lot of people do see this light that you're talking about, and it is and we could say it's the nothingness of Brahman. But when a lot of people say, if they have, I don't know if you know 5-MeO DMT, the toad DMT, a lot of people who have those experiences say it's like that. It's hard to explain. Like, it's not like a visual thing. It's outside the scope of like something you see, but it's more of a feeling or a presence or something like this. This is why in a lot of the traditions that they say focus on the, when you focus on the non-duality of reality in the present moment, you begin to bring in that feeling sensation, and you begin to feel a sense of oneness. It's a sense of unity, not perceptually, but it's a feeling you carry with you because you're abiding in that state. So it's a good question, though. I skipped down to the bottom for some second. Rebecca, thank you so much for these live streams, Jason. It's so wonderful to connect with you and the community. Good night, my friend. Rebecca, thank you so much. Thank you for being with us. Appreciate you. Big Man Tate, thank you for the answer. I think just getting tasks done without thinking is the sweet spot. When I'm in that place, I get a lot done and enjoy it. It's true. When I force things, I get burned out quickly. Oh, we all do, my friend. We all do. Over, are we? That includes the lower colon going towards the vacuum as well. Are we mature enough for esoterics? Depends on the day. Is what? Oh, yeah. Yes. Thank you, Ari. You're cool too, my friend. Let's have a look. What do we got here? Sometimes I get these comments, they get all jumbled up. I can't make heads or tails of some of them. Sashwat Pudel. I have anxiety and lack confidence while talking to people. I have problem with thinking what people think. Can meditation help this? Yes, it can. It can, Sashwat. Uh, yeah, this can be a problem on especially on the spiritual path. A lot of people have anxiety and confidence issues, right, about conversing with others. So again, I wouldn't overthink it and try to just have confidence in that you don't need to impress anyone. You really don't. You don't have to try to belong. And the irony is, and trying not to belong and not trying to impress, you'll probably impress others and you'll probably belong. So, but meditation can help loosen the grip on these sorts of anxieties. Anxiety is just that, anxiety really is related to uncertainty a lot of the time, right? Anxiety develops when we are uncertain on outcomes or on situations or on people we know. And so meditation can alleviate those anxieties. Again, you'll need to practice for longer periods of time, but it will happen for you. AD, I can confirm that psychic abilities has absolutely nothing to do with the natural state. No more valuable than being able to play the guitar. Love it. Sashwat, namaste. Well wisher from Nepal. Sashwat, beautiful. Where in Nepal are you from, my friend? Let me know. I can't wait to get back to Nepal. When can I come? Isabella Stroop, love the idea of fasting the mind and the heart. It's a beautiful thing, Isabella, a beautiful thing. And for those who haven't read my book, Fasting the Mind, make sure you give it a check. And also check out the Zhuangzi text where the actual phrase fasting the mind comes from. All right. Some people are talking with each other. It's hard to see who's asking a question. So, is Tao a way to reach nirvana? Well, Jeremiah, you don't want to objectify the Tao, right? Because the Tao is like Brahman, it's not an object of knowledge. The Tao, you would say, is nirvana, because nirvana, in the sense, is the end of self, is when the candle has been blown out. And so all there is then is the Tao. All there is then is Brahman. So it's not a way to nirvana. I mean, it is a way to nirvana, but like once you're aligned with that, you are living embodiment of nirvana. Nancy, is it possible and useful to have a moment of silence and stillness for the benefit of all now? Love to all. Yes, it is, Nancy. Very good. Okay. Some people are going off track here. What do we got? Pozzolido. Hello, Pozzolido. Thank you. Travis, agreed. Very fascinating subject. So when do classes start? Trav, they're on the way. They're on the way. Trust me. For those of you who don't know, I am organizing classes, courses actually, on the deeper aspects of Eastern spirituality. I'm not quite there yet because, as I said earlier, I've only just started chapter 6 of my new book, and I'm not one to multitask. So I'll complete this book and done and dusted, and then concentrate on the courses. So I can see those courses happening probably from January next year. And then we can also start to organize tours and meditation retreats. So I hope you're all excited about that. Preston Seymour, I recently started welding school and have also been incorporating my spiritual practice with my welding, and it's been a huge help for my work. Preston, that's music to my ears, my friend. If I'm, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Preston, but last time, well, not last time, but it's been an ongoing thing where you've had sort of a bit of friction between your family and your work and so forth and so on, and wanting to travel and everything. So I hope that's resolved somewhat. Jeremiah, do you think Jesus is another embodiment of Krishna? Depends on if you think Jesus is real or if it's just pure mythology. My opinion is Jesus, Krishna is Krishna. Yeah? Two different traditions. Daniel Short, hey Jason, I had an experience of clairaudience one time and I didn't even meditate at all. And it was strange. As I started to more, it begins to heighten more. That can happen, yes, for sure. Let's have a look. Again, guys, some people having conversation here. It's hard to see some of the questions without skipping someone. So if I miss your question, just maybe post it again, or we'll probably do another 10 more minutes and then we'll pop off. Judy, you mentioned earlier how the Hindus say your home, you consecrate your home, treat your home like a temple. Is that like Feng Shui? Yes, it is. How can I find ways to do this by their standards? The Hindu way is not as technical as the Chinese, the Taoist Feng Shui. I should just say the Chinese Feng Shui way, Judy, because what's important in the Hindu tradition is you have a particular point of focus, like a deity, maybe surrounded by gurus, incense, flowers if possible, things of the spiritual nature in the house, right? And you know what I mean by that, right? Like, so as you probably know from older videos of mine, I used to do the videos in front of my own puja shrine, but it's got the Buddha, Ramana Maharshi, Shiva Nataraj, Ganapati, surrounded by all of the books, the great books, and everything like that. So, and that's the place, right? But Guy and I would try to incorporate that all through our apartment. And so there's no specific, that's basically the specific rule. You have in Hinduism, you have a place on your watch, what the temple is like. And not just like, like some people just have like a little neat book stand and, they got a little Buddha there or something like this. Make it the focus of your house. Yeah. The same is in Feng Shui, right? But Feng Shui, the difference with Feng Shui is you're following sort of geomancy. So you're following certain principles on where things should be. Like, for example, you don't have something close to the corner of a room. You don't hang anything close to the corner of it. There's a lot of these principles in that in feng shui. So you try to avoid that. I mean, not try to avoid that. You can avoid that if you follow just what I mentioned with just to focus on consecrating the home with the images and the energy that is important to you. Yeah. So if that makes sense. Posolito, I've read some translations of the Tao Te Ching and noticed that in one of the chapters it says something like the master knows the masculine, but it sticks to the feminine. What's feminine? Good question, Posolito. And also, it depends on translation you have here, right? But what you got to understand is masculine is yang and feminine is yin. It's how they translate it in English. It's not male or female. Each and every individual, either male or female, both have masculine and feminine qualities. Now, in the Tao Te Ching and in Taoism in general, Lao Tzu's recommendation is always the soft, right? So the soft is the yin, right? Is the humble, is the receptive, which is actually the power base of the yang. So this is like if we use an analogy, right? Meditation enhances intellectual capability. So the yin practice of meditation enhances your yang capability of intellectualizing something. And so, but the difference is, as in that chapter, another way of saying that chapter is know the male and stick to the female, but stick to the female, is that your constitution, natural constitution, should be residing more in yin and applying yang conservatively, not all the time, right? So if we look at our world now, we live in a yin deficient world because our world is yang oriented. So we're all out there doing, constantly doing, and we're burning ourselves out, mental health issues, all sorts of world conflict, because we're not residing in the yin. Yeah. So am I back? Can you hear me? Yeah, okay, I'm back. So yeah, that's the difference. Yeah, that's the difference. So that's why they say stick to the feminine. Remember, don't confuse that with male and female. A lot of people make that massive mistake. Massive mistake. All right, guys, I'll power through these questions. Yeah, we've got 10 minutes left. Once the throat starts to get a bit parched, it's time to roll. Sashwat Budal, I am from Butwal, which is 25 kilometers east of Lumbini. Sashwat, I've been to Butwal. I didn't spend much time there. I spent 6 hours in Butwal. I didn't get to. It was stupid. Guyang and I should have stayed in Butwal. Like we were in such a rush to get to Lumbini, and then, you know. So if I come to Butwal, I hope to see you there. I can't wait to get back to Nepal. I seriously can't. The humble people of the mountains, I say. Big man Tate, sorry if I'm asking too many. No, Tate, bring him on. Too many questions today, but this relates to my last one. If we enjoy a particular activity, like you mentioned, athletes in the zone or singing, but we hate the marketing side, how do we do things we enjoy that put us in a state of wu wei, our li, while dealing with the effort of wanting to make a business of it? Yes. This can be problematic, Tate. It can really be problematic. Because what I've noticed from some people I know, even some fellow authors, I'll be honest with you, that they became really successful, but they, in the end, they don't like what they do anymore. because of the commercial side of it. But they're stuck in a bind because they have to keep writing books, not to share knowledge, but just to make an income. And so that's when I think you're in a rock and a hard place. So it's a tricky one, Tate. It is a tricky one. It's easier said than done, right? Like you want to do something without it turning into a business, especially if you become successful at it, right? Like, so that can be a problem in and of itself. So that's why a lot of people like to keep their hobbies, and they have their job as their job. I think that if you find that sweet spot, I think it comes down to like a real sense of passion for what you do. Yeah. And so if you have a real sense of passion for what you do, ideas of business and commercial, it becoming a commodity or whatever, if they come along, your sense of purpose has still not diminished. So if it has, then maybe you've got to try and pull the reins in and try to just, it's a cliche, but try to remember why you started doing it in the first place. Wow, there's a lot. Judy Butterfield, thank you for the super chat, Judy. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. Rebecca Sage, how often do you do these live streams? Lately, I've been doing every 2 weeks, Rebecca. This one went for about 3 weeks. I think I'll do it in a couple of weeks again. I hope you're around. So, Jeremiah, yes, makes sense. The Tao is nirvana. Obo, Jason, may I be so bold as to suggest you tell the interested in meditation, not only it being a matter of years, but also a matter of life commitment, such as using the bathroom. Yes. Well, the meditation is a life commitment, isn't it, Obo? You know that. So I remember when I was younger, a lot of people came across meditation, friends of mine, and they thought it was like a quick sort of like a diet. They thought it was a dietary supplement, like for their mind, right? In some sense. So, and I always said to them, it's not, meditation is like a constant medicine, it's a medicine we apply to our life. It's like taking a daily supplement, and it's a commitment, a life commitment. And again, like a lot of people don't, they begin meditation and they don't like meditating. What happens over the years is you start to really love it. All right. Travis, I'll be looking forward to July. Yes. Preston, yeah, thank you for asking. I have kind of worked out a rough outline of what I'll do. I'm going to finish welding school and get a job so I can pay my mum back and have enough. That's a good plan, my friend. Thank you, Jason, for the live podcast. Going to go to sleep, reading your book, Effortless Living. Thank you, my friend. Savoring it slowly. Namaste, my friend. Much love to you and Guyang. Thank you, Art. Guyang sends her well wishes. Jeremiah, I think you're mixing too many traditions, my friend, and that can be a problem with Western universalism. The concepts of Jesus and Krishna are completely different because Christianity is a monarchical version of the universe. So that's a political analogy, and Hinduism is not. So I know that Western universalism tries to make all religions the same. They are not. And there's a lot of literature out there on that. And so, no, Jesus and Krishna aren't the same. And it's its own tradition. There's a lot of evidence as to say Jesus was not even a real person. So even though they say that the life of some sort of Christ they called Saint Isha had visited India, and that's where the 18 missing years had gone. So, more to your question, that the relationship between Jesus and Hermes, who is Thoth, is closer in some sense because of its vicinity. But in saying that, a lot of Hermetic philosophers would throw their arms up because Hermeticism is vastly different than Christianity. You got to remember, Christianity was an outlier in history. When we look at the King of Kings tradition of Darius I, which is kind of which the King of Kings tradition, the monarchical view of the universe as God as ruler, became popular through Akhenaten in Egypt, but was kind of popularized through Darius I, which then infiltrated early Christianity. So that's where the idea of, God is watching you and this and that, which is not within the Eastern traditions, and also is not actually within the Greek traditions. That's why Darius I was an outlier at that time. Same time frame, we had Gautama the Buddha, Confucius, Lao Tzu, and Pythagoras. So, Travis, are the sects of Hinduism that believe their gods to literal? No. Shiva as a physical being instead of an ultimate. No. It's ultimate reality, Trav. Those who are, obviously there's going to be people who misinterpret the teachings, but all of the gods in some sense can represent also archetypes within the human as well. So, but ultimately, Brahman, Shiva as a representation of Brahman, or Vishnu as a representation of Brahman, is the ultimate reality. So that substratum, ultimate state of consciousness that we all are. That's what they say, Shiva consciousness, in a lot of the texts. If you read the Ishvara Gita, or which is called Lord Shiva's song in English, it's not like a being, so to speak. That's why actually the artwork within Hinduism is very otherworldly. Like, sure, some of them have physical forms and humanly forms, but they're not of the same skin color, and it's very fantastical. And also you have Ganapati, Ganesha, who has an elephant head, and I mean, go on down the line, how many different gods there are, which represent different aspects of the cosmos in the world. Like, even if we look at, Trav, to give you an idea, the Trimurti, right? So you have Brahma, the creator, not Brahman, not the ultimate reality. Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the sustainer, and Shiva, the destroyer, or the deconstructor. They represent aspects that the entire universal organism goes through. You go through it. The universe in its totality goes through it. So the universe as a microcosm goes through that process of Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. You do as well. So you are created, you are sustained for a certain period of time. Maybe you're very fit and healthy, Trav. So maybe at 90, then it starts you go through the destruction of the destroying sort of period of Shiva. But within both sects of Vaishnavism, of Vaishnava followers, and Shaivism and Shaiva followers, both Shiva and Vishnu are representations of Brahman. Brahma is not considered a representation of Brahman, and there is no sort of Brahmaism, which is strange. There's only really, I think there's one temple in India to Brahma, and I think you find that in Rajasthan. Maybe I'm wrong. Rajasthan or Gujarat. I can't really remember. But there's a reason that Brahma is not considered, because there's a whole old story within the thing where I can't remember precisely right at the minute, but Brahma was in the story. There was a battle between Shiva and Vishnu and Brahma as to who the ultimate reality was, and then Shiva appears and says, "Ha, like I'm the man," and Brahma got relegated to like this lower state. There's a whole story, and there's a whole epic to it, right? So Can't quite think of it off the top of my head, but no, they're not actual physical beings. So again, that's where radical universalism comes in and infiltrates Eastern philosophy, Western universalism. So Chris Tracy, have you heard of the tongue ping movement? No, I haven't, Chris. What is that? A rejection of Chinese workers and endless consumerism leading to a ridiculous work culture. There is a ridiculous work culture actually in China. Slave labor, basically. Also in Korea as well. It's really not good. Rajat Rajpal, please give some daily Tao's for effortless living as per Taoism. Rajat, I don't know what I think I sort of know what you mean. Big Man Tate, thank you again, Jason. Great answers for all, answering all of our questions as always. Really helps me on the path. Tate, thank you, brother. Nancy, I was ready to stay up all night with I'm so happy the Tao brought me home to all of you tonight. Sweet dreams, love. Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate you for being here. Posolido, thank you very much. I enjoy very much all the effort and content that you bring to your videos and the lives. Big hugs from Mexico. Thank you. I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. AD, most of the spiritual seekers want to get some benefit out of it. This has never worked out. Never worked, nor ever will. No, because it is not a question of persona. AD hit the nail on the head. It's not a personal, well, it is and it isn't a personal endeavor. You're trying to dissolve the persona. That's the thing. That's the endeavor. And so a lot of people, as you're alluding to, AD, will turn it into something where they want to be enlightened, where they want to gain certain, powers and this and that. But you've got to dissolve that tendency. Obo, thank you for answering. Thank you, Obo. Rebecca, where could I find out more about the story of Saint Isha short form? There's a couple of books, Rebecca. Jesus in India, I think, is one. There's actually a documentary on it as well. You can find it simply through a search, I think. But a lot of Indians actually call Jesus Saint Isha. Obo, thank you from us all for caring wholesomely, Jason. Thank you, my friend. Lyle, second Obo, thank you. Travis, thank you so much. Thank you, Trav. Luther, thank you. Great to see you again. Okay. Well done, everyone. Thank you for all joining. Yeah. Much love and appreciation to everyone. Good to see you all again. Hope you all enjoyed the live stream. Shanti to everyone. Have a good week. Have a good day. And guys, if you want to see the replay of the live stream, please become a member on Patreon. And yeah, and then you'll see a lot of exclusive content. So I enjoyed a lot of the good questions, and yeah, it's I could keep answering questions all day, but in the end of the day, I've got to do some other things. And yes, very good, very good. AD, I'm amazed with your knowledge. Thank you, AD. Much love and appreciation to you. I enjoy seeing you every time. Excellent job. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Lucky. Judy, thank you. Art, thank you. Excellent. All right, guys. Have a good day, and I'll see you guys on the next live stream. Bye for now.